Good evening, welcome everybody to the Town of Poughkeepsie Planning Board meeting for April 20th, 2023. Please start by joining me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. The sun's coming back out. There's one day coming. First up is Junior's Bar and Tavern, Dutch Turnpike.
Just born.
And you've been here a couple times already. What updates do you have for us?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board. For the record, my name is Frank Bell. I'm the project manager for Poughkeepsie Real Estate, one of Kirk Reynolds' property. We're having to be here this evening for a public hearing, and I'd like to introduce you to the plan. Once again, in case any members of the public are here.
You have to let it, takes a couple seconds to come on.
This is the site as it presently exists. There's a 1,600 square foot building on it. It's serviced by municipal water and private septic. The property's been several uses over the years. It's been a pizza place, it's been a video store, it's been a hair salon. Most recently, the hair salon was graduated out. There was some parking across the front of the building, and there was also some parking along the median, the space right away. And it's always worked, but we thought that it looked kind of sloppy to us, so we wanted to dress it up. And we put together a proposed plan which has no parking in the street right away. There's going to be nothing there. We've provided new parking area over here. By code, we're required to have 22 spaces. We do. We also plan to add a little patio, 600 square foot patio on the back of the building. We provided a walk along the side for emergency access in cases of fire. There's existing billboards on the property, but due to long-term leases, they're going to be there for a while, so we have to leave them there.
Okay.
Since our last time here, Mr. Holman, in his copious manner, provided me with some comments. And one of the comments, most of the comments are cleaning up the site, a lot of language and stuff like that. But he introduced the concept of landscaping. Now, the existing site has very little landscaping at all.
Yep.
We're going to beef up the landscaping on the two sides and in the front. There's a existing handicap ramp, and the only place you can really put it is in the front of the building. That's going to prohibit us from putting any type of landscaping buffer right in front of the building. Eric made the suggestion of putting something along the state median there. Of course, we don't own the property. It's what the DOT will allow us to have, and we'll make application. I think to satisfy everybody's concerns, perhaps planters with some nice landscaping in the planters would work. We would offer that as an alternative as opposed to a 10-foot buffer with landscaping. Our concern is anything close there, it's going to die. As soon as the plow trucks come through there 40 miles an hour, they're going to throw the snow and the salt on it, and it's going to just be a waste of money. We thought if we had to, we could put some planters there. We've shown snow storage areas here. There's going to be a garbage receptacle area right there. The other concern that Eric raised was, is there enough parking? We had a departmental meeting, and on the outside chance that 22 spaces is not enough, the suggestion was made that perhaps we could designate a reserved area in front of the billboards for overflow parking if it was ever needed. It's something that we could install in the future if we find that the 22 spaces is not enough. Based upon Junior's past experiences, the 22 parking spaces should be plenty, but to satisfy that concern, we can put a designation note on the map, overflow parking in the future. We're also going to be introducing some additional lighting. There's Because we beefed up the parking area here, we're going to put a pole light here and a pole light against the building, which will illuminate the new parking area. None of the light is trespassing on anybody else's property. We're also going to put a couple of down lights on the front of the building so that there's adequate light for people coming in. And we'll have down lights over the back patio. The hours of operation for the bar itself will be 11:30 in the morning to midnight. The patio area will only be from noon until dusk. For the most part, it's probably for somebody who wants to have a cigarette, whether they're having to go out on the patio, have a cigarette, and then go back in the bar. The patio area is also going to have some nice boxwoods around it. We've just about completed our Board of Health report that's going to be coming soon to you, Andy. Our engineer, Berger, has been out to the site. We dug everything up. The lines were cambered. The existing system is working fine. The only thing he's recommending is there's a pump that he thinks should be replaced.
Oh, the pump system.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's recommending to put a new pump in, which we will do.
Okay.
But other than that, the system is designed, working as designed, up to 54 people inside.
Okay.
Good.
Lastly, we're going to be improving the outside of the building. There's going to be charcoal gray vinyl siding on the sides. On the front, we're going to have faux brick to dress it up a little bit. This is the stone here. That's what the outside patio is going to look like. We've given details on the garbage dumpster area. And there's going to be a couple awnings on the front of the building. All in all, Lou Rossi will do a great job. He's been in the business for over 40 years. He ran a great business over on Salt Pine Turnpike until a semi-truck ripped his life out from underneath him and ran through the building. Thank God nobody was hurt. But he's anxious to get going. We're anxious to do a nice job. But our suggestion is, unless I can field any questions that the board members may have, maybe we can open up the hearing to see if there's anybody interested who wants to say anything.
All right, thanks, Frank. I think you've addressed a lot of our concerns, but Eric, what's the department's recommendation?
Sure. It's this application's on for seeker review, site plan special use permit, public hearing. This will be the first public hearing this evening, and also for architectural review by the board. We thought the plan was in pretty good shape. With a lot of the comments were really, we feel could be conditions of approval. They're cleanup items on the plan. What we had thought the board should discuss with the applicant, subject to your discretion. Frank outlined the two issues. One was we thought that the district regulations call for front landscaping. So we thought that it's a difficult site on which to do that. We suggested that rather than dig up the pavement, planters might work. That would be the intent and the requirement of the code. It's up to you. So we wanted to raise that for your discussion. And then secondly, also, as he had mentioned, the parking, if you want to have the applicant designate some reserved parking either as overflow parking or as land banked. You could make that a condition of approval if you saw fit. Again, that was something we thought the board should discuss and decide at your discretion. For that purpose, we have provided a negative declaration draft for your consideration. If you'd like to move ahead, there are no identified variances for this. So if the board or actions by another board, so if the board saw fit to go ahead with a seeker determination, if it's a neg deck, then the board could also consider a conditioned site plan approval and architectural review.
Great, thanks, Eric. Andy, anything,
Sure.
concerns of yours for seeker?
Yeah, so, like we heard, health department approval was gonna be, one of our concerns. Glad to hear that's progressing, and the evaluation is almost complete. Something that we were concerned about, kind of looking for, was some additional grading information, spot elevations, because of the new asphalt and pavement that's being proposed, so we'll be looking for that. We also had one of our engineers stopped by the site. I guess there had been some concerns about wet areas in the rear. It was found to be dry, so that's, a good thing. He also noted what looked like an old swale behind the billboards, that it would be wise to clean that up and kind of make sure that that's functional and possibly extend it, to make sure that the new improvements don't get impacted by any water coming off that hill. That's it.
All right, thank you. This is on for public hearing, so I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Did I count right? For people on Zoom, we have a quorum of 6 board members tonight. All right, is there anyone in the audience here who wish to comment on this? Come on up. Just come sit at the mic so we have an idea. Just state.
Sit down?
Yeah, just so we can hear you through the mic and state your name and.
Okay, my name is Clifton Bradley. My wife and I share the back property line.
On top of the hill, okay.
I really have no problem to the barn with restaurant there for 40 years. The thing that troubles me is loud music and bands. Our house is a little over 100 feet from the property line. If you look up on the hill, you can see.
Yep.
I'm an old guy, I need my sleep. Is there any way that you people can control loud noise, bands? They can't do it,
Yeah, I mean,
Again, I have no problem with the restaurant, I really don't. I wish them a lot of luck.
One thing I did not mention in my presentation is there's going to be no outside music. The patio is not going to have any speakers or music out there at all. Whatever music there is inside the building.
And that's noted in all of the
Yeah,
stuff.
that's on the
Yeah.
plans.
Everything, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Gonna have a band?
I don't know.
Windows open in summer.
Oh.
Again, I don't think you're right.
No, I understand. There is a noise ordinance in the town, and we're going to abide by that. You're the first house up at the top of the hill there? Okay.
All right.
We'll make sure we don't bother.
Yeah, it is.
Beautiful.
And if you give us a
You got a
call.
card, I can call you when.
That sounds.
One in the morning. No, if there's a problem, you give Junior a call and we'll take care of it. It's not a problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, and yeah, we'll make sure there's no lights shining up at you either, so.
Right. He's about 30 feet above.
Yeah. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to comment on this application? Anyone on Zoom? Seeing none, I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Let's go around the board for comments. Start with Steve down here tonight.
Yeah, I very much appreciate you putting in that extra space for parking. My concern's always been, if that gets, which we hope is successful, the property next to you after that, there's a street, and you could have people parking on that street impacting the neighborhood. So as much parking as you can have, we really look forward to that. So I appreciate you considering that.
Yeah, I'm happy to put something on the map. We can bank a certain area, and if we need it, we'll just open it up, sure.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Joan?
Just a quick question. Is there any concern that the space that would be for future possible parking could be impacted by the billboard leases? Like, do they have any restrictions or is there any impact?
No, we checked with the highway displays, and there's going to be no restriction for us to put the parking over there.
Okay, thank you.
And eventually, I assume you may take them down when the leases expire and have even more room, depending on how it goes. Rocco?
Okay, a quick clarification on two things. One is said, I think I heard you say that you would add the additional parking if needed, so it won't be there now. So that means that there's going to be a lead time involved, that's, you're running out of space, and so it's gonna take a couple of weeks to do that.
I understand your concern. What we can do one of two ways. For the overflow parking, we're not going to propose any impervious surface like blacktop, because we think that'll affect the drainage. We would put in a gravel area.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that. I mean, I think that's, but as long as we're preemptive rather than after the fact.
I understand.
Okay, and the second clarification is that, please remind me, I'm sure you've talked about this here in the past, but on your deck, you said it's really only going to be used for maybe people smoking or whatever, so there's no, there won't be any tables out
There
there
is
for
tables.
people to lunch out there? Okay,
There'll be 4 high tops out there.
Okay.
That people, they go there for lunch, they could go out, a nice
Okay.
day, they could have a burger outside.
well, okay, that's what I want the clarification on, because you kind of made it sound like it won't really be used that much. So there will be,
Yeah, we hope it will be, but it's gonna be closed down at dusk.
right, okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to suggest as the board discusses it, Rocco and Frank brought up a good point about the parking and the distinction between doing it now or later. Frank is correct that there's 2 ways to do it. It could be land banked, in which case there should be some kind of an indication on the plan of how it's designed so that it doesn't have to get discussed and figured out later.
Right.
Typically, when this board gets a land banked parking lot, it's already detailed. So if it's determined to be needed, they just go do what's on the plan. The other way is to designate it now, in which case it would also appear on the plan with whatever improvements gravel or whatever might be needed to be done along with the other renovations. So it would be helpful for the board's discussion to clarify which way you and the applicant would like to do it.
If we think extra parking is needed right away, versus,
Well,
I mean, it's fairly quickly to put gravel down.
Right, but
If it
it's,
is-
but it's always after the fact. Oh, okay, that's just my comment. My comment is that I think since it will be gravel, it won't really affect anything.
Yeah.
It may be good to maybe do partially, like maybe half the area that you would, whatever.
All right,
That's just my suggestion.
all right, thanks, Rocco. Nicole?
Well, here's a question. How many parking spots do you think you can get from that land banked area?
We haven't laid it out yet. I suspect we could probably get a dozen.
So that'd be,
Okay.
that'd be
Because,
good.
because I understand that the code says 22 parking spots, but you have 48 seats, right? 48. I mean, is everyone gonna carpool with each other? Probably not.
It's interesting. There's gonna be 48 seats, but in this past practice, there's never 48 people in there at a time.
Yeah.
You're there for a couple hours and you move on, because if you're there for a couple hours, he's not gonna serve you anymore.
Right. No, that's true. That is true. Okay. And if you get approval for the planters, maybe you can put some type of small, like, bush in there or something?
That's what we had in mind. yes.
Yeah, so that it won't
Some
die
bushes,
so.
some daylilies.
Yeah,
things
something that
look
won't
nice
die
and
so
cool.
quickly, yeah. Okay, yeah, I don't have anything else.
All right, thanks. And Ben?
I think everybody seems to have covered anything that I had questions about, so I'm okay. Good luck.
Yeah, my 2 cents, I agree, the planters would be a good idea to do in that, so I would include them on the plans for conditional. And I saw a note that you solved that drainage issue, that water that was pooling, there was a broken pipe or something.
Yeah. We did discover the same puddling around the back of the building that Bobby saw. And when we investigated, there was broken pipe inside because we ran out of fuel oil, the furnace stopped, the pipe froze and broke. It's been fixed, and now it's all dry.
Got it.
When Bobby went back there, he discovered that it was okay.
Great. Thanks for that update. And personally, I think the gravel's fairly quick to put down. But what's the purview of the board to put to land bank or put some down now?
I would prefer to see a land bank, something formalized on the map,
Plan.
so that when the time comes, it's kind of plug and play. And hopefully
If
there
it's
won't be
needed.
the concern that they can't get it up and going.
It's
to
fairly,
respond.
gravel's fairly quick to put
Yeah.
down.
Does the board have any concerns that it appears that the land bank parking would be in the front yard setback?
there's other parking along the road there, but I don't think so.
Okay.
We want to make sure that there's adequate, that they're not parking in places they shouldn't, so.
Right.
Do you have a concern?
No, I
Andy?
just wanted to make sure if we get a plan that shows it, that the board has considered it.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So I think we want to do that, work with the department, with Eric, to set up
The land bank?
the land bank, and then we'll have to come up with a
Mr.
trigger,
Chairman?
Eric, for,
You'll do the standard where it could be either the town that initiates or the applicant that initiates for the land bank agreement? Well, we typically do a formal agreement if
Yep.
you're having the land bank spaces. So it can either be a note on the plan, or we can do the standard agreement, which says upon the happening of one of these events, the applicant will put in the land bank, the parking.
okay.
I can work with Lisa on that.
Yeah, that sounds good, because then if whoever notices there's people parking in strange places, then we can pull that trigger. All right, thanks. I guess we're, go.
I move the planning board determine that the proposed Junior's Bar and Tavern, 1126 Dutchess Turnpike project would not have a significant adverse impact on the environment, and that no environmental impact statement will be required for the reasons set forth in the seeker negative declaration for an unlisted action dated April 20th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded for seeker. Call it the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Move the planning board grant conditional site plan approval, review approval, subject to the following. Respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies. Said responses to be reviewed by the planning department as to adequacy and completeness included of but not limited to the following 1 through 10.
And
Second.
out at
11, I'm sorry.
Out at 11, the Glen Bank parking.
And then
And
12
12,
would be,
the planters.
1 through 12.
Second.
Moved and seconded for conditional. Call it the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Well,
Thank you.
we got, hold on, we got architectural review. We got, Frank, we got to do architecture first, unless you want to come back for that.
Stay right there.
So what was your plans for updates to the building? You showed us briefly, I guess. It's on that chart there.
What was the question?
Architectural
Oh.
changes.
We've placed, these are all.
Frank, can you grab the microphone?
Yeah,
Please.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, turn that on again.
He already
left the building. Okay, the front of the building,
Another one?
the bottom half is going to have the faux brick like this, same colors. The siding, this color, is going to be on both sides.
It's like a dark gray.
Yep, shingles to match. We've got a diagram of the, this is what the dumpster area is going to be made from. This brick here is the outside patio, the cap line. There's going to be 2 awnings on the front of the building over top each window. Will be the structural color to match the siding on the side of the roof.
All right. What was the roof color again?
It's going to be slate color.
Slate, okay.
Yeah, to match the siding.
Yep. Anyone have any comments on the architecture?
Oh, looks good.
Yeah.
That's good. I move we accept architecture as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Now you're good to go.
Thanks again.
Good luck with the project.
Thank you. We're all invited to the grand opening. And we're lucky we were before Christmas Eve.
Wow.
Oh, what a ding there, Chris.
I would have recommended purple paint on the ground.
Welcome. This next up is Faith Assembly of God in Casper Kill. You went off to the ZBA, I guess, after we did seeker.
Yes, good evening, Christopher Levine with the
Presenting Casper Kill Golf Club.
Since we were last before you, we appeared before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Back in March, we obtained our zoning variance for the required rear yard setback, maximum lot coverage, and surface lot coverage for the project. With regards to the comments we had before the board back in February, the major aspects of the modifications that we made, we memorialized on our plan the 15 land bank parking spaces as shown here on the northeastern side of the parking lot. And there was some concern about the areas where the drainage on site would be channelized, and we've incorporated at the direction of the town engineer a riprap swale along the lower parking lot northern side, and on the lower portion of the property where it's currently channelized flow, we reinforced the existing grass line channel with erosion control matting. There were some other minor edits, nothing of substantial nature to discuss with the board about slightly switching some light pole locations and tweaking some grading here or there and adding some erosion control matting, but I think this was the gist of the major changes that were discussed. You did leave the public hearing open last month, or I'm sorry, in February, and we're here to field any questions prior to opening up of the public
All
hearing.
right. Thanks, Chris. Excuse me. Kristen?
All right.
What's your take on this?
Yeah, so the planning board has seen this application a couple of times. At this point, as was noted, the ZBA granted the variances that were required. The application's on for a lot line revision review and amended site plan. Staff only has a few comments left pertaining to cleaning up the plans. There are also just a set of standard notes related to lot line revision, just getting the proper paperwork filed. I would just like to point out that this is just something that comes up every time for the past 3 months for me. Please take note of the time limit related to filing. Yes, I actually have gone ahead, I believe, and granted you, or I haven't granted you anything, but I created a resolution for the planning board to grant you the maximum time extension per our town code so that you wouldn't have to come back. You know, it's 120 days to get it filed. So if we could just be mindful of that. I've had applicants scrambling literally 20 minutes before offices are closing on the last day to file, and I'd really like to not have to do that.
We don't have the luxury here to do that either.
Yes, okay. So otherwise, the application is on for public hearing, and if the board so chooses, you could open the public hearing, close, adopt conditional lot line approval with said time extension, and adopt a resolution to grant conditional amended site plan approval. I think I skipped over it, but the planning board did circulate its intent to be lead agency back in October, and actually adopted a negative declaration in February. So.
Yep. Thanks, Kristen.
Yep.
Are you satisfied with the drainage now?
Yeah, so, you know, as Chris said, you know, we have some very minor comments that remain that we're happy to work with his office to resolve, yeah, which could easily be conditions of approval.
Okay, great, thank you. As Chris indicated, it's on for public hearing, so I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, call to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to comment on this project? Or if you could stop sharing your screen so we can see if anybody's frantically waving on Zoom. You can raise your hand on Zoom or *6 to unmute your phone if you're on through your phone. Seeing none, I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Let's go around the board for comments. Start with Nicole here.
Yeah, I didn't really have anything. I'm still seeing that the water department doesn't have their certification, which I think you said that you sent it in. but
Yeah,
they're still
they're-
saying that they didn't have it as of like mid-April, so.
We confirmed today they actually do have
Okay,
it.
so okay, so there you
Okay.
go. All right, thank you.
All right, Ben?
No comment.
All right. Rocco?
No comments.
Joan?
No comments.
And Steven?
No comment.
Yep, you guys, you did address a lot of stuff. And appreciate you doing all the changes you guys made for accommodating the neighbor there. I don't think I've ever seen such a large barrier and that much landscaping to shield it, and which is important because this house is gonna be close. So appreciate that effort. And ready to move forward.
I move that the planning board grant conditional lot line revision approval and also grant a one-time 60-day extension as permitted by town code of said approval from Monday, June 19, 2023 forward to Friday, August 18, 2023, subject to the following. Town Planning Department comments dated April 14, 2023, LLR comments in this document.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
I move that planning board grant conditional amended site plan approval for the Faith Assembly Casper Kill project subject to the following. Respond to the comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, and said response to be reviewed by the planning department as adequacy and completeness inclusive of not limited to the following 1 through 5.
Second.
Moved and seconded for conditional, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
Oh, I just voted no.
You say no?
Yeah.
Okay, motion passes 5 to 1.
Thank
All
you.
right, I think you're good.
Thank you.
No architecture on this one. No new buildings. Okay, next up, Vassar College. New admissions building. I think this is your first public hearing.
Okay, so thanks, everybody. It's good to see you all again. And
Welcome
just want to thank you first for taking the time to review our submission so carefully, for the comments that you provided, and for the input that you've given us at prior meetings. And thanks for opening the public hearing for us today. What we thought we'd focus on is really the materials, the questions that you forwarded to us last week, as well as some of the comments that you made at our last meeting, rather than going through the whole show again, if you will. So really focusing on changes and answering questions that you've had. I also wanted to make sure before we move forward that you received the letter from SHPO, which we just
Yes.
received yesterday, and good,
Yeah,
great.
just got
Okay, and
that.
gave us a clean bill of health, right? Okay, good. So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ken and to Phil. I'll be focusing on some of the more qualitative questions that have come up, and then Ken will be going through more of the site plan issues, and Phil obviously going through parking. So do you want to start?
You start.
Yeah, but do you,
Oh,
I couldn't see it, okay, good.
Sorry.
Yeah, we can see it here.
Okay, you can see it there. All right, you want to go back one just a second?
Yep.
Yeah, so obviously there's our site plan. Yeah, now you can go forward. I thought before we got into some of the questions, I would just give you a high-level view of what admission at a place like Vassar means to students that are coming in and applying. I know some of you are parents that have gone through the process of bringing your children to colleges, getting them admitted, getting them matriculated, hopefully getting them graduated, but not everybody's a parent, so I just wanted to go through a little bit of that for you. As we've said at prior meetings, the location of our admission and career education departments are in the wrong place. Those departments have outgrown their spaces, and we'd like to move them to the edge of campus, close to parking, where they're easy to find, and with sufficient office and meeting space to serve the department's needs. What's entailed in the college admissions? So for many students who are deciding where to attend college, the campus visit is a critical moment during which they decide to apply or not to apply. And if they do apply and are accepted, the campus visit is a crucial factor in their decision to matriculate at the college or not. So throughout the year, the admissions department is hosting prospective students and their families, and during the month of April in particular, also hosting accepted students who are making their minds up about which college to attend. During the campus visit, typically prospective students meet with admissions staff, Vassar students, they take a tour of campus, and they attend an hour-long information session. From data that we collect from admitted students, we know that the experience they and their families have during their visit is critically important in convincing them to apply and ultimately to come to Vassar. Families often first visit multiple campuses in one day. They go to multiple colleges in one day, spending about 2 to 3 hours at each one. In this competitive market, we therefore want the campus visit to be as seamless, as inviting, and as stress-free as possible. The current location, which you all know where that is, of our admission building on campus, does not serve these needs. It's hard to find, it's without adequate parking, and there's insufficient office and meeting space in the building. In particular, we don't have a place to hold information sessions in our current admission building. So this project obviously is going to solve those problems, and by co-locating career education with admissions, we're able to capitalize on the synergies and similar needs of these two functions. So one more point about the campus visit that I wanted to make, and we know this from, again, our admitted student questionnaires that we do. One reason that students decide not to attend Vassar is because of what they perceive as a dissatisfaction with the local environment. Who knows what college-age students are thinking? We all know that Poughkeepsie is a great place to live and that the Hudson Valley is a wonderful place to go to college in. And so we also believe that by locating our admission office close to the town of Arlington, we're able to drive business to the Arlington businesses. Students are much more likely to go into the village or into the town there, actually go to some of the shops, feel what it's like, and we think that not only helps us, but as I say, will also drive business to the Arlington Business District. So that's just a little bit of sort of a high level of what the admission process is about and why we think this project is so important for us, and also has some great benefits for the town as well. So moving on to answering some of the questions that came up previously. One of the questions had to do with trees that are being removed as part of this project. You can see on the site plan here that the trees that are to be removed are in red, and those that are to remain are in blue. Vassar takes trees on campus very seriously, and as you can see from these colored circles here, we are removing some trees, but the number that are remaining are really significant, and we've oriented the building in such a way that we can preserve as many of the trees as possible. There's a cluster that needs to be removed because of the new entrance that aligns with Fairmont Avenue, and the trees obviously in the parking lot, because we're redesigning that parking lot, will be removed. But we are replacing any trees that we do lose with an equal or greater number of trees that are being planted. I might also point out that some of the trees to the west, so kind of to the closest to the roundabout, those trees are being removed not because they have to be removed for this particular building project, but rather because of their age and decay already. So those trees are either dead or dying, and so we're just taking this opportunity to remove them. So moving on, you can see the other question that this relates to is the landscape that we will be creating around the building. As you can see from these images, the taller trees are those trees that are remaining that we're leaving in place, obviously, and then the trees that we're replanting or planting in addition to those that are staying are shown at a somewhat smaller scale. Vassar College campus, I think as many of you know, is a designated arboretum. We're a member of something called the Morton Arboretum, and we're also a Tree Campus USA. And a few weeks ago, we hosted the Department of Environmental Conservation with their annual meeting of new members of Tree Campus cities and Tree Campus organizations. So we do take our trees seriously.
Just curious if those renderings, how many years in is that for growth of the trees?
So as Miriam pointed out, the taller trees that are there are existing.
Existing, right.
So the ones that are short, you'll see they're between 5 and 8 feet are planting height type
Planting,
trees.
they're planting height in these renderings, okay.
Yep.
That's what I was
The other
wondering.
thing I'd say about being a campus arboretum and tree campus is that one of our goals is to plant trees that are native to New York, or we know due to climate change will become healthy in this area, and also to plant species which are pollinator friendly, either habitat for pollinators or actually pollinating habitat itself. So that's true of the trees as well as the lower shrubs and planting beds that will be oriented around this building. So in this image, you can see, again, a little bit of more of a close-up. The dashed circles are circles that I think are the ones that are existing, and the solid circles are showing trees that are being added around the building itself. So another topic of conversation that came up was had to do with sustainability and what are the sustainable features that are being included in this building. And the first thing I would say is that when siting a building, doing that appropriately, with southern exposure and so forth, really allows one to be more sustainable than if you don't take the site seriously. And as in this case, the long face of the building is facing to the south and to the southwest to capitalize on that, on the sunlight, and use passive solar practices in the design of the building. So what that means is that the building optimizes natural light, as we said before, and heat, which can significantly reduce energy consumption. It also incorporates shading devices, which change depending on the face of the building that you're at. And these shading devices, again, reduce solar gain, so you minimize the need for air conditioning during summer months. Other features, again, because of the southern orientation, we have solar voltaics planned for the roof. We have a lot of use of wood and natural materials, which again reduces the use of chemicals and the need for maintenance. It's also a good carbon sequestration practice, reusing wood. And we have cross ventilation to decrease energy use. Again, I think I mentioned this last time. The windows are operable, they're high on the wall, so again, allowing warm air to escape. We've got fans and so forth, again, so that you get circulation, minimize the use of needed for air conditioning and energy consumption, that kind of thing. Let's see, what else do I have on my list here?
I see EV chargers.
EV chargers, which are there in a box in red, and I'm going to turn it over to Ken to continue with that.
Sure. We've proposed 10 EV parking spaces in the parking lot, and we have one handicap accessible parking space in the Gordon Commons parking lot over there. One of the comments was related from Tim about having an ADA compliant one, where I've reached out to him today, wasn't able to connect, but we'll work with him as to where exactly that location has to be to meet. We're using the combination of both parking requirements for the total when you calculate. So we were looking at it again across both parking lots. If we have to adjust, we can work with that as a detail with Tim as we get there.
Just as a comment to you, if the federal government gets its way with the latest proposal, you plan to put any additional conduit in for future additional chargers? Or?
There's discussion about that. There are other locations on campus that also, as I believe someone was pointing out the last time, the campus is doing a campus-wide master plan, so to speak, as to where other places are. So I don't know that we would add more necessarily right in this spot. That would probably come to another location on campus where there aren't any.
Thinking about it.
Yep.
But Ken, before you go on, speaking of EV charging stations reminded me of the most important thing I forgot to say about sustainability, which is, as with Vassar's plan to be carbon neutral by 2030, new buildings that we build cannot add to our carbon footprint. And so this building is an all-electric building. We're using air source heat pump technology to provide heating and cooling with the building, so all electric. And since Vassar purchases renewable electricity, it means that by creating an all-electric building, we're not actually using fossil fuels and therefore not contributing to operational carbon as a result of the building.
One of the comments that was asked was with regard to the electric switchgear that is being removed and relocated as part of the project, regardless of the current project. But one of the questions that was important was about the poles that were going to be removed. There is one pole at the intersection that's gonna be moved to the left a few feet to avoid being right on the curb. And we are looking at relocating the two that are currently out in the middle of the parking areas, back to, accommodate the parking that we're proposing more organized on, the street there. So the other comment was about the poles and the electric coming into the thing. We talked about it at the last meeting. We are still actively working with Central Hudson to remove the lines entirely at this entrance. So that in that case, on the picture here, you see there would be one pole on the left, as we do need as it goes further to the west, and then one pole in the middle where the switch gear is, as you see the electric going down into the site.
Yep.
Other than that, there would be a removal of the overhead wires at the whole intersection to clean that whole intersection up.
It'd be nice if they can do it.
But we are working with Central Hudson, and Central Hudson is not moving quickly with us, unfortunately, on that subject. But we're getting there. We're getting closer every day. So this is our goal as to what we have for a visual going into the site. But there may end up being two poles overhead with an overhead wire. One of the other questions was, where does that switchgear go and where was it? You can see where it's located here on the left. It's kind of centrally under where the building is almost now. That switchgear is being removed as part of that project to behind the existing Jewett building, where you see in red on the right, there's a current backup generator and electrical gear there now. We're expanding that fenced area to accommodate both and put it in one common area. As part of that, though, there is a dumpster now in front of the current switchgear that or not switchgear, but the generators by Jewett that we're moving to the end behind Jewett as the end of the thing to clean that all up nicely and kind of tuck it away in the corner there. The other comment that came up was regard to the HVAC unit. There are no units on the roof here. They're located in what we're calling the egg. It's an oval-shaped fenced area, as you can see on the bottom right, as a blow-up that sits just outside the left side of the building, kind of tucked away in the thing. There's no walks by it, so it is definitely screened from the public view. Turn it over to Phil to talk about the traffic.
Good evening, Philip Greeley from Colliers Engineering and Design. As you know, we are involved with the traffic and parking aspects. In terms of traffic, just briefly, we had prepared a detailed traffic analysis. It was reviewed by your consultant, JMC. We provided some additional data to respond to their previous comments, and I believe the board has a April 6th letter from JMC agreeing with our conclusions of minimal traffic increases and that this would accommodate the project. In terms of the intersection reconstruction, as described previously, we end up with a four-way intersection opposite Fairmont Avenue. That will be an all-way stop-controlled intersection. It's a three-way stop today. It will become a four-way with the fourth leg being the access into the reconstructed parking area and the new building area. So in terms of modifications, we are reconfiguring some of the parking, improving drainage, improving the alignment, improving the efficiency of some of the parking along College View Avenue. For example, on the south side, the spaces are not currently marked. As you go to the west of the new intersection, those will be striped. We did meet with the highway superintendent to review the plans and obtained his input, so we are working those into our final construction drawings. There will be new ADA ramp compliant ramps at the intersection, sidewalk extensions, so it'll be pedestrian friendly and accommodate the volumes accordingly. There are about 4 or 5 other items I'd like to get into, really more related to parking. In terms of the improvements here, again, these are working with the town. There will be a New York State DOT highway work permit over on Raymond Avenue, near the College Avenue roundabout. There is a small section of sidewalk where we will be connecting from the existing path
to the existing sidewalk along Raymond Avenue, and there's about a 4 or 5 foot section that falls within the state right-of-way. So we have been in contact with New York State DOT. We will be getting a permit to make that connection. It actually is being rolled into the permit we're doing for the Inn and Institute. So that will all be advanced. That was requested in the March 27th letter from New York State DOT, and we had already had previous conversations. In terms of the parking, kind of leads into that whole discussion. The parking for the Inn and Institute, if you remember, we had a land bank area that was set aside. This plan depicts the spaces that were spelled out in the parking management plan for the Inn and Institute. We had 156 parking spaces. We have reconfigured that, still the same 156 spaces, but to take into account the current development, building location, etc. We've reconfigured that, and the plan that is up on the screen now depicts that same 156 spaces in the same area, just reconfigured for efficiency and the new building plan. The other area that we had gotten into was we don't require any variances in terms of parking for this new building, and we have provided an area proposed for land bank spaces that if they were ever needed, they would be built. They're over near the Jewett building, and they were shown on the site plans, and we would follow the same procedures. When the science building was approved back in 2014, there was an agreement with the town on the land bank, which initiates it, and basically it's at the direction of the town. We would prepare, after the building is built, we would look at the parking conditions, provide that information to the town director of municipal development to review, and if the spaces were needed, we would have them built. If not, then we would go on. So the format of that agreement would be exactly the same as the April 2014 agreement that we had on the science building.
Right, work with Lisa on that.
We'll work with the town to get that done. Two other items that we got into at the discussion last meeting. Vassar has worked with the supervisor and the town board on an agreement for making available on evenings and weekends the parking. Now that we're creating this four-way intersection, it's actually more friendly to the area there, for the Arlington area. So that's being worked on with the town board, and that agreement will be put in place to get that and to kind of work together with the business district there. I think those are really the main highlights. As I said, we've addressed all the previous comments, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I know the bid is working on a parking study, and you guys are actively involved in that as well. So.
Yes.
And I will mention that Mark from JMC was not able to attend tonight, but he had his latest comment letter, had mostly minor additional comments.
Site plan copy,
yeah, exactly.
Work through those, that's fine.
So that's to work through. All right,
Correct.
anything else?
No, we're all.
All right, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
And Eric, what's the department's take?
So this will be the first public hearing for this application. It's before the board for seeker environmental review and site plan. The submittal did cover a lot of ground. The principal questions that we felt were outstanding, one of them was the historic archaeologic review, and we just received a copy of that sign off from the state this morning. And another lesser concern was just what was happening with the parking management plan from the Vassar Institute.
Right.
They've addressed that tonight. We look forward to seeing that in the next set of plans. Those were kind of the most largest outstanding issues for planning. So we could foresee, if other issues from engineering and other departments are all set, we can see way to a possible resolution at the next meeting, with the next submittal. So we've recommended deferral with conditions from the planning and other departments. As far as the traffic, Mark Pipitro is correct, he's not here this evening. You have his comments. There was really the one substantive issue is the traffic analysis, and as Phil said, the April 6th letter indicates that there's acceptable levels of service at the intersections that we studied.
All right, thank you. And Andy?
So we still have a number of comments to be addressed, but most of them are relatively minor, nothing, that I'm at all concerned that they would be able to address. So yeah, I agree with Eric. I think they're moving along nicely. Could potentially be ready for approval next meeting.
It's a big project, lots of comments. All right, let's, it's now on for the public hearing, so I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Is there anyone in the audience wish to comment on the Vassar application? Come on down.
Yes, I'd like to comment.
Hold on 1 second. Online, we have one in the room here first, and then we'll come to you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Bob Legacy, Director of the Arlington Business Improvement District, and obviously, Vassar's been very good about keeping us involved. They have come to our board meetings. So I have a letter of support tonight from our board of directors. And
Bob, I just want to make sure that that microphone is on.
Switch.
Just give it a sec.
It was on when it was sitting there,
Oh.
so it might have.
Maybe the battery died. Try to use the other one.
All right,
can you hear me okay now?
sure.
I'm here this evening to speak in support of the new Vassar College of Mission and Career Education project on behalf of the Arlington Business Improvement District. The new building will add a beautiful eye-appealing structure to the south side of College Avenue, which today is void of any structures the length of the street. By moving the present Mission and Career building from the center of the campus to the northern boundary facing College Avenue, it will bring enhanced streetscape by creating a front door to the campus. This project lends to other construction presently happening or planned in the near future in the district. The new building and pathways will welcome thousands of Mission visitors to the area. The location of the building puts visitors into the shopping district dominated by many great restaurants and small shops. For new students, they will get their first view of the vibrant Arlington Business District at their doorstep. Construction of a new entrance to the college directly from Fairmount Avenue will make easier accessibility to the college. The new entrance will create an opportunity for Vassar College and the Arlington Business Improvement District businesses to share parking on nights and weekends when it's most needed. The 2022 parking study highlighted the increased need for parking on Friday and Saturday evenings in the Arlington area. As the college continues to increase their presence outside the main campus, it helps to increase the vibrancy of the local Arlington area. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else in the room wish to comment?
I have 2 letters that were given to me by colleagues that couldn't make it tonight. Should I read those in or submit them to you?
You could
probably submit them.
You could submit them to
Okay.
us. That'll be
I'll do
fine.
that.
We'll take them under advisement. Now, there was someone on the Zoom call wishing to make a comment.
Yes, I'd like to speak.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is Michelle. Of course, my comment is going to be definitely about the wireless utilities that will be included. I'm sure there's going to be additions to that, whether Vassar is going to choose in their master plan to push those off towards the community or not, is left to be seen. I have not really looked at the plans, but I know Vassar is very concerned about carbon emissions, about sustainability, about conservation of energy. They do not know, though, that these wireless utilities facilities are energy hogs, and they are, putting out an enormous amount of RF microwave radiation for the purpose, mainly, it's not for phone calls, because that public necessity has not been determined or looked at, but rather for data streaming, so that their students can, in real time view TikTok videos while they're walking to class. It's for data streaming, and I did reach out. Besides the human problem with that, and spreading this out to the community to make sure that they can also watch TikTok videos while they walk, that, the environmental department of Vassar was contacted, and I sent them numerous studies showing that if they do care about pollinators, I know they were talking about setting up pollinator gardens and yada yada, that this toxin contributes to colony collapse syndrome, which, as people may, who are informed, may know that this is highly destructive of the pollinators. And we're noticing, if anybody does look, that bees are dropping dead all over the place. And primarily, this is has an incredible impact. I'm talking about RF microwave radiation. So we're making sure that data streaming can be
Hey, Michelle.
accessed in every single
Michelle, the three,
of our environment.
if you could just wrap up, Michelle, it's been 3 minutes and we have other folks in the room.
Okay, so every single corner of our environment, we're going to be able to data stream. Now, that's not what the TCA of 1996 promised. It promised that we would be able to make phone calls. So please consider all this with your concern about the environment and energy, etc. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your comments, Michelle. There's no wireless facility planned with this application.
Was there someone
at the
else on
so,
here?
just for the record. Anyone else?
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wish to comment? When do you think you'll be able to come back?
We'll be back for next one.
All right, seeing none, I move we adjourn the public hearing to May 18th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, let's go around the board for comments. Start with Nicole.
You answered a lot of the questions that I had. One thing that I wanted to ask, and maybe you have enough, but it looked like you could possibly add maybe 1 to 2 more handicap spots close to the admissions office. I only see, is it 1 there or is it 2?
2, I think.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you have younger people going there. However, are their parents with them? Are their parents handicapped? So, I mean, I would think you should have at least 4 closest to that building. I know you have 2 more further down. Yeah, but that's pretty far. That's not really accessible. So I would think you should add 2 more.
We will definitely take a look
comment.
and look at
Okay.
that. We were trying to locate them strategically throughout so that it
I
was
completely
all in one
understand, but
place.
as a handicapped person, you want to be as closest to the door as possible. So, yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Nicole. Rocco?
Yeah, a couple of things. First, thank you for answering all of the sustainability questions that I had. I think that's a very nice plan that you have there. A couple of other quick things. Those, as I've walked around the campus over the years, I noticed that all your trees, well, I wouldn't say, most all of the trees are marked with the type, whatever that they are, and whether they were gifts by alumnus or whatever for special purposes. Now, my question is, the trees that are coming down, especially those that are dead, are they so noted? And then if they, let me say it like this: if there's any trees that will be cut down that are noted, have you considered replacing your new plantings with like trees?
Yeah, so when we remove or when we lose a tree that's a class tree, or, a memorial tree we have on campus as well, what we typically do is replace that tree, not necessarily with the same type, because it may be a tree that doesn't survive well, but we do replace the tree and reuse the plaques. So we, for example, recently we lost a tree, a very large tree, which was an elm tree. We lost, it was the class of 1945, believe it or not, the class of 1945 tree. We'll be replanting a tree in place of that one and reinstalling the plaque for class of 1945. So we do that typically. The trees with the little numbers on them are actually trees that are recorded in our database that we monitor for health and other reasons. Some of those are part of the Arboretum. And when we lose those trees, we tend to also try to replace them in kind if we can with the same species, but not always.
Because one of the nice things about walking around the campus is really the diversity of the trees there.
Yeah.
And they're quite, well, some are very large because they've been there a long time and they're quite magnificent. So,
We
if
take
something
that very
unfortunately
seriously.
comes down,
Yeah.
if you could consider putting a like tree up, that'd be great.
Yeah. I should have also mentioned that one of the key purposes of an arboretum, besides being a collection, it's really a collection of trees,
Right.
is to use those trees as teaching tools.
Sure.
So that's why we have the labels and that kind of thing, and we have a database so that students and faculty can use the collection as a teaching and learning tool in the arboretum. So.
All right, thank you.
Sounds good. Joan?
I would also like to say thank you for your presentation and the additional information. The question is the shared parking agreement, is the plan to have that wrapped up with this application, if at all possible? It's not just like they happen to be happening at the same time, but that, one is gonna be wrapped up with the other, if at all possible? I know you don't have control over all the parties, but.
So the shared, there's two the shared parking for the Indian Institute, that's already done.
Right, no, not the master
For the-
plan,
for
but with the town.
37 or so spaces that we have land bank, that will be worked out directly with the town, the same agreement as before. So we'll have that as part of this application.
No, I'm
It'll be in
referring
place.
to the shared parking with the business district.
Oh, with the business district, yes.
Yeah.
So that's being worked directly with the town board, and that's, would be
Yeah,
taken care of.
we're not considering that part of the.
Okay,
part of
but
this
I just didn't know if
application
the
directly.
campus wanted to sort of try to wrap that all up with this.
Yeah, we do want to wrap that up at the same,
Yeah.
along the same time frame, but it will be before the town, with the town board.
If I may, Dave Kaminsky.
Hi, Dave.
Our attorney, Richard Cantor, the ball is in his court to draft an agreement and to get it to Lisa for review. And then it'll be submitted to the supervisor and the town for their approval. But our intent is to get that done at the same time that we're getting everything done here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave. That's
Yeah, we're
my
just not
comment.
tying it directly to this project because
Okay.
it's a separate
Yeah, I
entity
understand.
working with the bid and the town board.
No additional comment?
And Ben?
Thank you. It was a nice, good presentation. The only thing I have a question on is College View Avenue. I think at the last meeting when you had the model here, someone brought up, are they gonna do anything with the end of College View Avenue there, past the entrance? Down, it's like a dead end there, and it's not very big and not very easy
So
to
as,
turn around.
when we met with the highway superintendent, we're resurfacing and restriping, and just past the existing entrance to the campus there is where you're talking about, where it dead ends, and we're gonna define that. There's some curbing going in there, resurfacing, but that's basically it.
Little turnaround or something, make it easy?
No turnaround, no.
It's gonna remain the way it is.
Yes.
For the most part there, just resurfaced and fixed.
Clean it up, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I had a couple questions myself. For the the new substation, I guess you're putting in new equipment there. I was just curious how tall that equipment gets and how tall the fence is.
The equipment, exact height, I don't know the answer of, but I believe based on my conversations, it's about 6 to 8 feet tall.
Okay, so you probably have a,
Yeah, and the fence is 6 feet, so it's just a few
6
feet
foot
higher,
fence.
but there is substantial plantings there because it's stuck behind the other equipment that is already there.
okay. And I think someone had referred to some, I mean, I appreciate the effort you're working with Central Hudson to bury some of those lines, and that will be much nicer. I think someone had made a comment to maybe some plantings around utility poles. I'm not sure how viable that is with access to them and everything
It's
else.
difficult always to plant around Central Hudson
Right,
utility
right.
poles.
They need access to them, so.
And no matter what we plant, the minute they get into a beautiful height of tree, they come in and remove
Oh, yeah, you don't
a
want
nice
any-
little
you don't want
chunk
any
out of it.
trees that'll go up into the
Correct.
lines, that's for sure.
So, where we can, what we've done is try to create a background of trees. So like when you're looking at it from the street, there's a cherry LA that's going right through the middle of the parking lot to break
Yeah.
that up with color. So hopefully, when looking, they lose their visual when you
Yeah,
have
that'll
that
look-
behind it.
It sounds like it'll look nice. And the last question I had was, you didn't bring it up in your presentation, but you covered a lot. That was great. But you have a phasing plan here on the PH1 phase sheet. And I was just curious, what type of timeframes you're thinking of for these phases and overall, how long for the project?
Well, the overall project length, I believe, is 24 months total construction, somewhere in there.
Okay.
18, somewhere in there.
That's
The reason of the phasing is depending on when we actually get to be able to start construction, because the north lot is used, we have to work on the timing of when that is.
Yeah.
If it's during school session, we have to work on keeping that open. So we tried to work out creating the entrance on the new entrance in that would become the phased construction entrance. Potentially, depending on the timing of everything, if it works during a summer where we start in that period where we can shut the north lot and do the work in the summer, the north lot may get done right away before much of the building gets started.
Okay.
And or vice versa. The building may get started and then the lot may get done in pieces and parts through that, based on that. So we tried to phase it in areas that we know we can accomplish during the summer periods because it is active. It isn't necessarily an area where you can just close off all the roads and say, okay, we get to build here for 18 months.
Yeah.
We do have active parking and active
Understand that.
driveways through there.
All right, thanks for explaining that. So,
Excuse me. Mind if I ask a question before you go?
Sure.
Brian Swart, with Vassar. Nicole, you asked about putting in a couple more accessible spots, and
Right.
we have maximized the parking we think we can get on here between the land bank. So I'm curious, do you think about prioritizing total parking versus a couple of extra
I'm
accessible
talking
spots?
about specifically the emissions building.
I totally understand,
Yeah.
but as we think about total parking on the site,
Yeah.
we have kind of maximized the area we think we can fit parking. So adding 2 more spots would take away from the total available spots
right.
that we think we can get here. So I'm kind of
Right.
curious, you're thinking about prioritizing 2 more spots of accessible parking, which takes away 2 spots in total, I think, if I did the math right. I'm just curious
Yeah.
your take on that as we think about this between now and the next meeting.
My take on that is that ultimately, kids going to college are 18 years old, and their parents are anywhere between 40 and 70 years old. And within those year ranges, you tend to have people that start to have medical issues. And with that, may need to be getting to a building in a more quicker area, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
you know, I'm thinking that you need to have possibly 1 to 2 more. And if the town thinks otherwise, that's fine. I'm just a planning board member. I'm not a town.
So the direct question that
Planner.
we're kind
So-
of asking
so,
is,
yeah,
Sure.
if we were 1 space less in our count, is everybody on the board okay with that? So we could put in the 2 spaces, essentially.
I mean, I think I would be okay because you got some land bank stuff there anyway
Yeah.
to come up if that happens.
Okay.
But I think where she's coming from, if you're having a whole group of students all at once coming in for a
We fully understand.
It may be a bigger crowd of.
trying to work
People who need it.
the number, everything to fit without taking
Yep,
up more
understand.
space.
Right.
So getting your feedback out as a consensus, if we, because we're submitting on Monday, if that would be the case, we can move it around, but we would end up losing one space, and if the board
Right.
seems to work with that, then we'll proceed in that direction.
Right. According to the parking table right now, they have exactly the number they need, so they'd be shy one from what they're requiring.
I know Michelle's bringing up older people coming in with students, but you could have good possibility of students coming in with handicap also. Right?
Yep.
So one of the comments that David just reminded me of is, even though we're shy one, there's also, there's no requirement, the board has the right to adjust that with shared parking and those things. So it wouldn't require variance, it wouldn't require anything, it just requires the board's agreement that that number makes sense. So that's kind of where we're asking, so that we don't get into this again for next month, so. If the board seems to think that would be acceptable as a whole, then we'll proceed in that direction.
And what do you think, Eric, based on your experience with, if a big group is coming into?
There's, I mean, in fact, the parking table itself is kind of a snapshot in time, and it represents only the parking spaces on this plan. And in fact, it's a campus with parking in many different
Everywhere,
places.
yeah.
There's parking at Noise, there's the new Kenyon parking you just built. So 1, 2, 3 spaces here or there is really,
It's not a big-
it's not, in the big picture, I don't think it's really gonna matter. I guess the only other thing I'll mention is that there was, one of the comments also had to do with the parking table. I'm not sure what we're comparing, because there were some discrepancies in the square footage, which is what the required parking is based on. So it's a mathematical technicality. If you're comfortable with it, if as long as there's a reasonable amount of parking relative to the demand, it's fine.
And
That's my assessment.
And in that, we showed the existing parking as what was there, but there's no quote-unquote square footage account, because you said as it is, it's a campus. So we
Right,
were
right.
trying to accommodate that in a traditional sense of adding the new spaces with that. So we didn't have to go into saying, okay, well, this one has this and that kind of thing. So to your point, as a whole.
Any other board members have comments on, putting a couple of 2 extra? I guess it would be a group of 2, it's the way it works, right?
It would be 2 spaces, and because of the striping, you
Can't-
lose
you
the one in
lose
the
one.
middle. So you'd essentially lose 1 space.
I'm in favor of that,
Yeah, that's
personally.
fine. Yeah, I think
I'm in
Okay.
favor.
We'll,
Thank you,
we'll
everyone.
do that then.
Yep.
All right? Ready to-
Great. I move that the planning board determine this application is incomplete for seeker review and defer further action on this application, and direct the applicant to respond to comments in writing of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, included but not limited to the following 1 through 15.
Should you add something here regarding
And
parking
that's
space?
16.
Adding 16
16 there.
with adding 2 more handicap parking spots.
Yep. Okay, second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right?
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for
Thank you.
coming tonight. We'll see you next month.
See you next month.
Okay, next up is BP4 Westerly House. I see Mr. Tinkleman online here. Still muted, though?
He's here.
Oh, okay. You're hiding back there. That's great, you're in person here.
Thought I saw.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Tinkleman, Tinkleman Architecture. With me is John Leicester from Tinkleman Architecture and
Ken Casamento from LRC.
Long time no see.
Been a while.
I have a slight apology I need to make, is that where our office is in the town of Poughkeepsie, there was a Verizon outage, which is still out, so we had no internet service this afternoon, so we weren't able to bring our deck of images for, that we wanted to present tonight. So we're gonna have to trust Ken's sense of humor to really move this conversation.
And we have it in our packets.
Well, we were lucky enough where Rob Turner was able to go home and download the file that we sent in on the thumb drive. And so we're gonna be able to use it.
At least have that part.
But we don't have the pretty pictures. So.
Okay.
So, my apologies. So tonight, what we'd like to do is probably be a little brief, since you've seen this project a number of times. I want to first thank Eric Holman for organizing. We've had quite a few good conversations, not only with Eric, but with all the town department heads and such. So we moved a lot of the issues along for the effort here. If I could use Eric's letter as an organizing document for some of the comments here. The first section has to do with some of the secret issues and some site plan special use permit issues. And the goal tonight, if at all possible, would be just to try to pin down some of the open issues that we have, so that we're moving the file along.
Forward, yeah.
Our goal here would be to try to have a robust enough conversation so that we have real good direction, so that our submission, which is now scheduled for the June meeting, where we're hoping that we could satisfy you enough to get site plan approval for that June meeting. So that's kind of our goal.
All right.
So the first comment that has been brought up in the letter had to do with the zone campus and how we got it to the unit counts that we did. And I think we went through that exercise and we demonstrated that we met the requirements. Of course, with that, there's going to need to be considerable work with Lisa Cobb, and which in terms of just developing the easements and the legal understandings about how we got to where we did with the densities and all that, so that it's memorialized. There were some other issues that came up along the way, which had to do with an extension of the sidewalk as part of the whole master plan of Van Wagner Place. And I think we've all determined that where we want to connect is to go from where we have a sidewalk in front of our new pork chop building, which is now called 44, but and we want to move to the intersection of Van Wagner and Springside and all that on the south side of the road. And I think we talked last time was that we were hoping to do that final connection there with the next project that's being submitted to the town next week. And Eric Holman suggested that that in case that project didn't happen, that we could put a time frame in there, so that that sidewalk, if for some reason the town doesn't approve the project or something like that, that that we have a commitment that we've made to putting that sidewalk extension in, and we're comfortable with that, if that makes sense.
We'd have to work out an agreement with that, with Lisa there, I guess.
The only complication on that really is, well, there's two. One is that Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse owns their parcel, and so we would have to get permission from them to do that. I don't see why they wouldn't do that. And then there's this magnificent
the huge tree, yeah.
And there's some root structures there that create some handicap accessibility issues that we're going to have to figure out. So we may have to raise the height of a parking space next to it, so the grades work. But we're willing to work that through with with Eric. That is okay with the board.
All right, thanks, Steve.
There was also a discussion about, and where this application gets complicated is, and if you can help me with the cursor, is the site for our main driveway goes through what is known as 43 Springside, and that's an R20 zone property. So part of our application to the town is going to be to rezone that to ATC, so it conforms to everything else that we're doing in the neighborhood. And once we do that, we had 4 parking spaces at the top that we took out. And the reason it was taken out was not because we didn't want the spaces, but it was it was a technicality because it's a R20 and you can't do an improvement on R20. And I'm sure, Eric, you can say that more articulately than I did, but.
Okay, that's why they disappeared. Okay.
So, what we've done is we've tried to pre-engineer, in terms of the SWIP stuff.
They're built into the stormwater design for the future development. They're accounted for. They're just not physically shown on the plans now. So that,
okay,
as we would with a land bank parking space, we're essentially designing them so that if and when Steve gets approval on the zone change and he comes back for that, we can build those spaces as part of that.
So they haven't disappeared?
Correct.
Okay.
They're living in a plan view and stormwater design, but they're just not physically on the plans because we can't show them there yet because of the zoning.
It's in our imagination. The other thing that I would also say is, as you've got to know the way we work, is we'd likely come back for some changes anyway once we see how easy it is to manipulate some of the rock that's on that site, and we won't know that until we get into it. And again, those 4 spaces are definitely something that we want, and again, that's part of the legal process. There was another discussion about we moved the sidewalk in this last submission to the
other
western
side.
side, and I think through some recent discussions, we're going to move it back. And the reason we moved it had to do with, as we got under construction with our 44 Springside building, it turned out that we had a power pole that was in a spot that we didn't anticipate, that created a problem for building our building. So in the last couple of weeks, we worked out an arrangement with Central Hudson. We moved that power pole, so now we know where it is, and we know how to do crosswalks and such. Because it's not the pole as much as all the guy wires and things like that.
Yeah, it's getting in the way.
So it's another lesson of watching in our site plan. So we think that moving it to the other side, which is one of the comments from the traffic engineer, Mark, and that will work for us. So in the next submission, we'll be moving that back. It also lessens the crosswalk, because as you come down now on the east side of that new driveway and you cross over Springside, you come right out of our building. So you don't have to come across Springside and then cross the entrance that it now shows.
Right, I mean, people are gonna walk that direction anyway, probably, so.
Yeah.
So best to put the shortest
we
distance.
appreciate that. But, again, it had a lot to do with that power pole.
Okay, great.
We've also had, I think we mentioned last time, had to do with our neighbors and, the landscaping plan. And, we think we have a pretty, thoughtful landscaping plan on the plateau of the new building, where we have a 5-foot landscape buffer in there, and there's, a mix of hydrangeas and dogwood trees and such. And we're actually proud of the building that we're designing, and we really don't want to over plant it. But we think that there's a nice syncopation. There's a dozen trees or so that, are, on the south side of the building. And again, it's a wooded site on the back side of it, so you want to have some, openness and air. We also worked with our neighbors, the 3 neighbors to the front, and I think we talked about this last time, but they really wanted to be able to see the building. They wanted more yard rather than planting it. And so our proposed arrangement with the Dennis family and the Mertlick families really is to build the wall, clean up the mess that is. There's a rubble wall there that's in disrepair, so that's going to get removed. We're going to build this new retaining wall. We're going to grade parts of their property and replant grass and all that. And we also understand that there'll be a need for an easement agreement, so that'll be something. And that'll be something that we get to, have the pleasure of.
Can I just ask how high that wall is behind their parcel, and how high is that retaining wall?
That wall in there is right about 6 feet, 7 feet, somewhere in there. At the highest point.
Just trying to visualize it.
Which is right by the existing storm. Right as it comes out, it comes up. Shorts up quick.
So speaking of that, the retaining wall is right on the property line.
Right.
So all this landscaping is at the top of the wall. So it's really, it's a buffer, but it's really a buffer that's, maybe more helping your residents. It would be less visible to the existing people in the building, in existing houses, right?
Correct.
And I also have a little bit of concern about the trees being planted at the top of the wall. You might want to consult with your
Yep, we can do that.
geotechnical engineer about that as well.
We did meet with the neighbors and we asked, originally we talked about planting the bottom of the wall at the bottom on their property, and they asked Steve not to do that because they'd rather look at the wall. They like the look of the wall. They were here in front of the board at the last meeting, and I remember Peter was the one that said, "Oh, that's the first we've heard someone not want it screened." But that's why we haven't proceeded in that planting at the bottom. There.
Mr. Dennis is here, if you wanna.
Yeah, we'll get to the public hearing. We do.
But yeah, so we will look at the top though, that question.
Right. Yeah, we gotta make sure they can thrive too, wherever they happen to be.
There
All
was
right, anything else to present?
There was also some questions about the street trees along where the curb cut meets Springside Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 4 trees there. We think that we're gonna need to lose one of them there on the DOT property. There are 3, we have that one? Yeah, so we have 3 trees, and it's a site distance issue, where the closest tree we may lose that because of visibility on there.
Okay.
The other 2 seem like they'll work, and as a condition here, we'll have that diagrammed out. That site distance also becomes an easement, so there'll be meets and bounds and all that. There's one other tree which is to the east, and thanks, John. That tree, we're gonna look at limbing it up, so that and then we'll
see
make
under it.
Yeah, so, that still needs to be tested, but we appreciate that there are 4 that have to be in the final plan, and then we'll make sure it's clear as to the decision-making that we made on that. There was another point, and I think we deferred this until we had final conversations with the DOT, and we got some really pleasant news back from them, is that we were not sure what their requirement was gonna be for connecting the driveway to Springside Avenue, and we were really concerned that they were gonna get us into some complex legal process. And it turned out that they were very easygoing, said, "Oh, this is just a highway work permit," and they didn't have any issues with it. So we decided to keep it easy and not, try, because if you get into asking them to landscape and beautify it, they'll then have to send it back up to Albany, and then they get into, so, we figured maybe we'll deal with that in the future, but the issue had to do with the sign for the property. And if you can show the spot, and this will be complicated because the sidewalk is gonna get moved to the other side, but we're gonna put a sign that's gonna be just simple, and it'll just either say Westerly or a number, and that's all it's gonna be.
Just a monument sign at the base there.
So
Sounds
we'll,
good.
we'll have that in the next submission, but it'll be as simple as that. There's no other signs on the building that we're proposing. There were some comments in here that were also appreciated about some of the lighting that needs to get worked out down by where the driveway hits Springside and along where the new sidewalk is, so we're gonna show that, and we'll have the photometrics there. There were also some comments about planting in the parking lots, those 4 spaces that face 485 Springside. And it mentioned that there were no planting there, so that car lights could go on those. And it was a good comment, we missed that, so we're gonna, put some, and we'll have that planting plan in there. There was also conversation about the pedestrian connectivity to the adjacent parcel to the east, and we're still, we were planning to put bollards there so that they were a little bit more pedestrian in feel, because they're in front of residential buildings and it's not part of the parking lot. So I think that'll be better, and that'll be on the drawing as well.
Okay.
So.
And for the lighting, on that intersection, be careful, it's not starting to encroach upon the neighbor there as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we actually are not
Shine.
sure which side to put the lights on, because it could be that it might be easier it gets screened according to to your ordinance.
code, yeah.
But, there were also some things in the package that were, mentioned, and I think it came up in the Vassar piece, is about the EV stations. And we're being progressive because of, you don't know where the world is going, but it sure looks like we're gonna have a lot more electric cars. So we're setting up, on the Pork Chop project, for example, we're setting up conduit so that, we can really just build as need goes. And we're gonna likely, I think in that project we had 2 approved, but we're likely from the jump gonna have 4. So it seems like a smart thing to do. The issue of the handicap requirement for that is not clear, but we'll have to, meet with Tim and make sure we understand.
Yeah, I think
what that is.
At least one has to be
Require one.
handicapped, yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
So exactly where it goes and such. There were other lighting comments that we're going to address, so they were good comments, and in details. Let's see, was there anything else? There were a lot of good points just in clarifying some notes that were on the drawing. So we'll take care of all that. I'd like to turn this over to Ken to talk a little bit about the comments that we got.
So I won't steal Andy's thunder.
Yeah.
But we did talk, and we do have a plan to work through some of the items that Andy has to address some of the concerns. With Storm, we feel we can do it and achieve it and make it work. But there are still some items there to go through on that.
From under the building, I see. That's great.
It's very, if we got into the details, they'd all just look at me.
Yeah. I'll let Andy get into the details. But first, all right, thanks,
And then
guys.
a couple last things is, in the same way we've been working with the Dennises and the Mertlicks in the front, we've been working with the Arlington group in the back.
Yep.
And we're working on, and they've been great to deal with, so far. And we're gonna, have an agreement that we'll bring to, with our next application, or the next meeting, for both parties. And they'll be, again, the condition of the approval can be on the formalizing of easements, which would probably occur after you approve the project. But at least you can see that we've been working with them and we're semi-legitimate.
Yeah, get the stormwater all worked out through there.
Yeah.
All right.
So I guess-
Thanks. Eric?
Wow, Steve, you did all my work for me. You answered all the questions. Yeah, I think Steve pretty much covered the main issues that we had for the board. You can have your own reactions to them. I think perhaps the only other thing perhaps to mention might be, I know at a previous meeting, there was a small discussion about amenities. They're separately from the rec fee, most residential developments. The rec fee is about recreation demand on the town and recreational space that's a demand to be provided for the public. But there are also residential requirements for recreational space for the residents of a multifamily development, and that's at the discretion of the board. So there was discussion of a hoop or a half court or a pickleball or something. So that's, for you to discuss if you'd like. That's pretty much it. If those things can get worked out and the stormwater, it could be queued up for this is various have been identified, so it could be queued up for a seeker and for a resolution next time.
Sounds good. All right. Time for Andy's thunder.
Well, I think Steve and Ken pretty much covered everything. The main thing is I think we just need to get together offline and kind of work out the stormwater stuff.
Yeah, I was happy to see this. You're able to work out the stormwater pipe not going underneath the building anymore. So that was a big concern that Andy had, and as well as others. So.
Well, I hate to admit this, but it's fun to do this in public. But Andy's suggestion actually turns out to be a better one in a way that we didn't anticipate. So just by looking at, sometimes you look at it and it wouldn't turn out this way, but but thank you. It seems like this is a good solution.
Good.
Guess we'll keep them.
All right, let's, at this time, I move we open a public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Is there anyone in the audience tonight wish to comment on this project?
My name is Norman Dennis, 29 Berkeley Terrace. Okay. I have nothing bad to say about Steve whatsoever, okay? I mean, he's a perfectly gentleman, okay? And, you know, about the stone wall and stuff, you know, that's gonna be in our backyard, okay? I'd rather look at the stone wall because it's a decorative stone wall and it's nice and clean. There's no trees that's gonna die. There's nothing, you know, that you have to worry about leaves and clean up and the whole routine.
Mowing around.
We're very fair, you know, with that whole routine and there's no issue with, I'd rather just have the stone wall, look at it and the decorative, and if you know, you choose to plant something along it, then that's on us, but I mean, for, you know, and I'd rather sit there and look at a nice clean yard in the back of me rather than sitting there having all trees and shrubs, all that, it gets overgrown and out of control. And, okay, I'd rather look at them rather than me have to worry about jumping the fence and have to clean them up.
Yep.
Not that Steve would do that anyway, but I'm just saying, but over time it happens. You know,
Right,
it's just out of control.
For sure.
And thank you very much
Right.
for your time.
Appreciate you coming and commenting. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom call wish to comment? You can unmute or do *6 to unmute. And you said you'd be back for June? At this time, I move we adjourn the public hearing to June 15th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. We'll go around the board for comments. Start with Ben this time.
I think they covered everything.
Yeah.
Nothing left for me.
Yep, quite a bit of detail. Steve?
I do have to say, it's just a beautiful, the work that you're doing is great and everything. And just one question. Do you have plans for any recreational facilities there to help the tenants and stuff?
Well, so good question. We'll be bringing back, as part of our new application for the whole neighborhood, we have identified different spots where we want to do some things. So we're gonna start opening up that discussion. We lost our pickleball court because of the fire department's requirements of turning around a fire truck. And that was the spot where the pickleball court was gonna go, so.
Is there a spot for it up by the dog park?
Well,
perhaps?
to Steve's point earlier, one of the important things with this is we know we have rock on the sides. And depending on what the nature and how hard that is and how hard to move, that will help dictate, because Steve's desire is to still have one. But it's hard to put it on a plan and know that could be an astronomical cost, or it could be something that's a much more manageable cost while we're there. So as Steve pointed out before, that kind of is an amorphous thing for us a little bit, in the sense where as soon as we get in and start to really move earth, we may be back in front of you for field changes or additionals for those to come in.
Okay, yeah,
Because we want to make them.
Pickleball's become very popular lately, so.
Well, and so when Ken says the word may, come back in front of you. But as an example of that is, if anyone's interested in coming by to see the new building that's under construction, we finally figured out how to come out of ground. And the site was so complicated where you'll have a spot where the rock was 1.5 feet below grade, and then you'd go 10 feet in another direction and it was down 20 feet.
Yes.
So we ended up having to drill these micro piles into the ground, and they're pretty unbelievable. The story is too long for the meeting here tonight.
Yeah, we still got a full agenda.
So anyway, to Ken's point is, we everything that we're doing is for the neighborhood. That new, kind of neighborhood, plaza that we're building is for everybody. And the dog park is for everybody. We'd like to do more, and and we have a couple of surprises that we're working on now. So to your point, it's really vital, I think, for our success to continue that development, so.
And if you think there's kids coming in, some kind of playground thing might be nice too, or play structure. Anyway, anything
No
else,
other
Steve? Okay. Joe?
Have you settled on what your dimensions for the dog park are gonna be?
Dog park exists already.
Right, do you know the dimensions of it?
That is, it's on the map.
Is it? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
Plan.
Yeah, we'll bring that
Okay.
data back, but it's up there now,
Yeah,
it's
it's
fenced in.
I don't have a scale.
It's about 20 by 40.
Oh, okay.
something like
And like, could you put some trees like closer to the dog park? It doesn't look like there's plantings around it such that it
whole
would.
area is heavily wooded.
Okay.
So
Oh, okay.
It's that whole hillside topography, it's
Oh,
all.
okay.
It's a
Perfect.
really pretty,
Yeah.
it's a really pretty spot. Actually, part of the plans are likely to put some more benches up there and do things like that. So you have a nice view of the neighborhood, and, because it's on a hill up there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Joe. Rocco?
Okay, just a quick clarification. Maybe I missed this, but those 4 virtual spots that kind of live right now in the ether, are they tenant parking or guest parking?
We haven't designated, so it'll
Oh,
be.
well, because I've always asked, since you've come here, if I'm a tenant there, where do my guests park?
We haven't built policy on that. We have at Hilltop and Center House, we designated certain spot. Each tenant gets one spot where they know that's their spot, and then the rest of them are free spots that are for guests and for them. And it's worked out really well up there. We have enough.
Right, but that's up there.
But that
So
could be
now you have a beautiful building, which I'm sure will fill up very quickly, and I'm sure that those people will have guests.
Yeah, well, we'll share policy. I'll present something about what we are looking at, but we also have to have the right to change the policy, because sometimes you might want to, designate for everybody, and then just call certain things guest, parking. So I guess I don't want to make up an answer. I don't know, but.
Okay, well, that's still open in my mind, because I've asked it from day one, because it's pretty tight there.
Yeah, it's a good idea to make sure that everything's not numbered for the apartments, so that, as you said, so guests can, that's an idea.
All right, that's it for me, thank you.
Nicole?
Yep, just circling back to the retaining wall really quickly. Since your neighbors don't seem to want any type of trees or any shrubs or anything above that, are you then going to just keep it as a wall and with nothing on top of it?
There is planting on top that we proposed. One of Andy's concerns is the type of planting up top that we have to work out, and it's a good question to talk through.
Yeah, but like the neighbor was saying, he doesn't want to have to clean up any.
The leaves coming down.
Right.
I think we would look between the two subjects. I think we
Yeah.
would look at the landscaping that we're putting in there.
Okay.
That would be more amenable to both, and not necessarily a tree height thing. Maybe more shrubbery, more things that aren't going to drop leaves and stuff that could get on a neighbor's yard to maintain.
Right.
So we'll look at that buffer zone, so to speak, and come up with a more robust type localized planting that doesn't end up with stuff across, and also protects the wall and stormwater and everything underneath.
Yeah, and again, I don't think, Mr. Dennis would sign off on the easement unless we talk through that with him, so.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's good to have some kind of, are you finished?
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
And I'd say, I think it's good to have some kind of plantings there, but as you said, nothing that's invasive on his property as well. And you did cover most everything I've talked about. We talked about the visitor parking, sidewalks, screening, and we talked about the amenities, pickleball or what have you.
All right.
So I think we're good to go.
Okay. I move that the planning board determine that this application is incomplete, defer action on this application, and direct the applicant to respond in writing to the comments of the planning board and those received to town departments and agencies included but not limited to the following 1 through 14.
Second.
Moved and seconded, call to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you,
All
everyone.
right, thanks
Thank
for the
you.
update, and we'll see you in June. Next up is Erie Materials on Sheaf Road.
Good evening, my name is Stephen.
Groundhog Day.
Rob Turner on my right, an architect with our firm, and
Christian Paggi with Paggi Engineering, the civil engineer for the project.
So this application has been in front of you before, as you know, and you know, again, we've had the benefit of great meetings with the town departments and with staff and all that, and we've really advanced the ball on a lot of things. And there's also been supplement conversations on the project since the submission has been made between you know, Christian and Andy and et cetera, et cetera. And I guess that one of our goals tonight, if I can be blunt with you, is if you like the direction of the project, and we've answered some of the concerns in this regard, is we are hoping to get a negative deck from you on the secret process. And the reason for that is we would like to be in front of the zoning board and be able to, you know, get a determination from them for all, there's many business reasons why the timing on this is important. And we know that we still have to come back and resolve a lot of the open issues here. So, you know, that would be our laser focus for tonight. But I think you'll hear in, if you know, my goal is to take some of Eric's thunder again by using his letter, because it was helpful for us to look at the issues that were important to him and to you as well. The first one had to do with the seeker review, and if I could turn this over to Christian, he's been working on both of the two issues that have been outlined here.
So the first, 1A, the comment relative to disturbing the existing berm in the rear. I've already had conversations with Eric and with Carol Knapp, the town's wetland consultant. And after discussing that, we've agreed to relocate those drainage pipes to avoid the berm for a number of reasons. So best path forward is the path of least resistance with this one. So, and as I admitted to Eric, I can be stubborn, so they were able to talk me out of it. So, the next submission will demonstrate that, but we do believe that we'll be able to avoid impacting that berm. That dovetails a little bit into the second comment, 1B, relative to the SHPO review. With that revision and not impacting the berm, the limits of disturbance will be within the same footprint as what was previously approved with Valley Christian and what was previously reviewed by SHPO. So our feeling is that would address that comment as well. Yeah, the septic, number 2B or 2A. We acknowledge that we're going to need health department approval. We'll be submitting those plans to the health department shortly. Any correspondences will be provided to the town that we have with the health department, and any approvals from the health department obviously would need to be demonstrated prior to final the chairman signing the plan.
Christian, if I could interrupt, have you had any further conversations with the health department since our meeting a few months or weeks ago?
Just that the plan has not changed. We'll be pursuing the on-site septic system.
Okay.
If during that conversation the the health department, Andy, and myself were on. I think it was in March. We talked about the what the health department would require to be able to entertain an on-site sewage disposal system for this project. Similar to the Valley Christian project, they would require us to demonstrate that connection to a town system is infeasible. What was different from the Valley Christian requirement was they pointed out 2 additional potential connection points in addition to the O'Donnell pump station on the adjacent property. So we need to evaluate those and demonstrate that those are impractical for either technical reasons, financial reasons, or other. So we've been working on putting that information together, and we'll be demonstrating that to the health department. We fully intend to demonstrate that those are impractical, but we will put that information to the health department and copy Andy to make sure that they're satisfied with that.
And you probably have a lot less use than the church would have had.
It is less, yes. Yep.
All right.
In 2B, on the noise impacts, the benefit of Erie having a number of sites already in operation, so we're able to do detailed studies which we submitted, and we meet the town requirements in terms of the sound and noise analysis. Met the code chapter 139 is listed here. So those were the secret issues that were mentioned in the letter here. In terms of some of the site issues, there are some corrections that need to be made or clarifications. One of the issues had to do with the fence around the property, and unfortunately, because we didn't have the color drawing it, but we did one just to show the fence, but we're hitting the entire perimeter except where we have the storage buildings in the back that are acting as that wall, or around the trash corral where you have a fence anyway that meets that. But it's all going to be an 8-foot high galvanized fence, with the privacy slats in there. So we're going to meet the requirements of the ordinance around the entire lower campus of where the outdoor storage is. We'll have the details of that, but it's a standard fence that you've seen. The future building note in the back, we have these 2 rectangular structures. One is going to be constructed right now. We'd like to get the approval for both. They're going to be the same, but we're showing that we're really building one at this time, and that's the reason for showing the second rectangle is for that purpose. There's an issue with the dumpster location, and the ordinance requires it to be 50 feet from a residential property. The back property on the other side of the berm is technically residential. There's housing about 300 feet away. It's all overgrown there, so there isn't a visual impact. There is a berm there as well. So we're going to ask the zoning board, we're going to demonstrate those arguments in terms of the visibility. The site actually to the bottom of the sheet is also industrial, so it's commercial. Yeah. So it's just that back piece. We're more than the distance required from the O'Donnell housing, on the top side of the site. So that's going to be an issue in front of the zoning board. If we're not successful, then we'll find another spot for it, but it's in a pretty practical spot given the operation.
All right.
We still have some details here I mentioned, but just to mention the variances, and then I guess I'm done here. Is we have 4 that we're looking at. One has to do with the side yard setbacks, and it turns out that on I guess it's the south side. We didn't need to. There's no variance that was
north side. You
north
don't
side.
need a variance. The south side will be going for one.
Yeah, and the reason for the south side at the bottom is that where the loading dock is, we're putting a roof over that area, and it's not going beyond the edge of the pre-existing non-conforming building, but it'll be right up there.
But
So it's not
yeah.
increasing the setback issue. The trash is the second one that I mentioned. The third one has to do with impervious. We're a little bit more on the impervious surface than the ordinance allows us 75%, and we're about 80%. So we're asking for that. I think for the successful operation, I think it's a requirement for that. But again, the site is screened from, the perimeters are screened on this site, and hopefully they'll see that, this is a really good project for the town. And the last one has to do with parking, and it's maybe the largest by number, but maybe by fact. The ordinance requires 138 parking spaces, and we're proposing 37. And where the number comes from was really studying the operations of other Erie sites, and this is actually more than we think we need, and the idea is why park it if you don't need it. And the conversation, the deeper conversation that we had with our client was, are you sure this number is right? Because, and their comment was, well, we wouldn't do that if it was gonna hurt our business. And again, it goes back to testing what their site is, because we actually have more room to put more parking, but this is really all that's necessary. So those are the four, the four zoning requests, for the variance.
All right, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I understand. So, it's not a retail thing, it's just for contractor pickup and things, so it's less parking required. All right, Eric?
Sure. Eric, if I could just, if there's anything else, because we have a list of things that, for Christian, about Andy's comments, do you want to do that now, or?
Oh, we'll get to what Andy says if we have.
Okay.
Most of them were technical, but we can run through them. It's your
Right. See what Eric has to say first, and then we'll.
Well, but again, you stole most of my thunder, so that's great. I got to give credit to Christian and Robert for working through what we felt were what Carol and I felt were seeker issues in the last 24 to 48 hours. And this morning we worked up a neg deck that reflects the offer that they mentioned to relocate the drainage line so as not to disturb the berm. That really took care of a lot. So with that, we have prepared a negative declaration for your consideration. The hearing that will continue tonight should be adjourned so that, and not closed, so that the applicant will go to the zoning board and then return to the planning board for continued review. I guess the only further things for discussion with the board, the future building, I know I didn't really review it. I didn't consider that as part of the application because it was marked future and the area of the building wasn't included in the zoning table. I don't know what other reviewers did with it. So I think what I'd suggest is make sure you have your data correct for the zoning board and then clarify it when you come back to the planning board so that they could consider acting on, after the zoning board, they could consider action on a plan where it's clear what the intent for that building is. And then if you have any questions about it tonight, you should, of course, ask.
Right.
Also, I would suggest to the applicant for your refuse enclosure variance, when I scaled that, it sure looked like it was about 50 feet or a little more to the rear property line. So if you were able to slide that over and double check your measurements, you might save yourself a variance. I don't know, you just check it. That's pretty much it. So you have a resolution for seeker and for deferral.
Great, thanks. Let me start with Carolyn. Are you satisfied, or is there other issues that?
Yeah, this where the disturbance in the berm was because of the angle of the proposed drainage lines. It really took a considerable amount of the berm out, disturbed it, and by Christian saying that we're going to avoid the berm, it really solves a plethora of potential issues dealing with We're right outside the wetland, but that slope on the down gradient side is very steep. So we've eliminated taking down additional trees, eliminating screening potentials, archaeological potential down gradient erosion. It also helps screen, by leaving all that vegetation there, helps screen noise and everything else from the neighboring, the neighbors away. So very happy that they've avoided the berm, so.
Yeah, it sounds like it's
Can you
heavily,
guys stop sharing your screen for a second?
sounds like it's heavily,
Thank you.
wooded there, or a lot of.
It was yeah, it's just a much better plan by leaving that there.
Great, glad you're able to work through that.
Thank you.
And Andy?
Yeah, so, we still have a number of comments, like Christian said, they're mostly technical. I don't think I need to get into the details. I would like to see, the grading on the north side of the property, updated to reflect the as-built condition of the Forson's site. I don't think it's gonna have a significant impact, but I think it'd be better just to make sure everything's tied in properly.
I've been trying to get a surveyor out there to
Yeah.
get that done, so
Great.
we're working on that. We'll get it done as soon as we can.
Okay, excellent. But otherwise, I'm with Carol. I think it's better not to disturb the berm. And, but otherwise, I think I don't see any issues with proceeding with seeker tonight.
Okay, thanks, Andy. And it is on for public hearing, so I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Anyone in the room left or on Zoom that wishes to comment on this application? No one in the room here. Coming back for June, I assume. Steve? Or come back for June, I think.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Are you in front of the zoning board in May?
Yes.
We have the application in current minutes.
Okay, good. At this point, I move we. See somebody?
No, I'd like to speak, may I?
Oh.
Hello?
Hi, Michelle, would you like to speak on the Erie Materials application?
I do, as well as landscapers and growers everywhere, and for Steve, who's always very respectful of buffering and screening, and Peter Finelli, who knows so much about trees. I did want to speak about the fact that, when we grow things, we pay for them, and we put them in the ground, we want them to be successful. And what that kind of led me is to there is an agenda, the global warming thing, and I know that there are a lot of left-leaning institutions that are really engulfed in this, and a lot of them participate in Bill Gates's agenda to employ weather modification, otherwise known as cloud seeding or SRM, solar radiation management, or it's also called stratospheric aerosol injection. So you have to put in the right terms in order to get Google results. Anyway, supposedly it's all experimental, okay? And, but instead it's really widespread all over the country and worldwide. This is being done. And it was confirmed by independent lab tests here in Poughkeepsie and Woodstock and on Queens as well. And, if anybody's curious, I can hook them up with the lab results that show that we have evidence of barium, strontium, nanoscale aluminum, particulate, and silver iodide in our rain. I'm not talking about groundwater, but I'm talking about before it even hits the ground. And there are dozens upon dozens of other, places that have confirmed that we have this stuff in our rain, and it's all carcinogenic. Okay, so this unusual chemical footprint is in our rain. Now, the interesting thing is that Vassar is complaining about a lot of their beautiful trees are dying. But they're not concerned at all about testing for those ingredients in the rain. But I will tell you that something called, and this is just from the research I've done, I get no remuneration from this, but there's something called that landscapers should all know about, inoculated biochar. And what this stuff does, and Peter Finelli may be very interested in this, is it pulls out the toxic metals, but since it's
Hey,
inoculated,
Michelle,
it then
your
puts,
3 minutes
it
is
then
up.
puts-
If you
it
could
then
just
puts-
wrap it up a little.
it then puts, yes, it then puts the minerals back into the soil. So McEnroe Organic Farms and other landscapers that are informed, I hope that they're listening to this, because we do have a problem with tree die-off, and that is partly the reason why. So inoculated biochar, apparently, can really help. That was it.
Okay, thanks. Michelle?
You're welcome.
Anyone else? All right, I move we, adjourn the public hearing to June 15th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. We'll go around the board for comments. Start with Nicole this time.
I don't have any comments, thank you.
Rocco?
No comment at this time.
Joe?
Thank you.
My only comment is, so for trucks entering the property, they're only gonna be coming in from the south, is that correct? Like for large trucks?
That's the intent, yeah. The applicant has indicated that they will be working with their deliveries to inform them that that will be the way to enter the site. Is that the trucks themselves
Yeah,
are not
they
gonna want to try to make that turn
Yeah,
also.
is there gonna be signage up though to that effect, to saying that they couldn't turn in from the other direction? Cause it looks like they might end up getting stuck trying to pull that off.
Yeah, we can go back and see if they have experience with that in other locations.
Okay.
We can see if that would be helpful here.
All right, thanks. That's it.
No
Steve?
comment.
All right, Ben?
The only thing is the issue with the fire department, is that that's resolved with the water and the hydrants?
Yeah. We have some code work to do on that to make sure we understand what the building code is gonna require us to do in those sheds down below. And we're also looking at that north,
The fire department connection up.
where the sprinkler is, yes.
Yeah, where the Siamese connection is.
So we'll have that resolved for next.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Is there another hydrant needed or something closer down in the back, or?
It depends on whether we need sprinklers back there. If we
Okay.
need sprinklers there, but there's also the possibility of putting a hydrant along Sheaf Road in a different spot that gives you the 600 feet.
More accessible, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a deep site, so you have to make sure you can get back there with water. All right, my comments, we talked about, the apartments are up higher, and I don't know if you've talked to them at all yet about potential, the only way to putting plantings on your property doesn't really do much, but if you said you'd be amenable to maybe if they wanted to have something in theirs to,
There hasn't been any conversation with them on that.
okay, hopefully, see if they want to chime in on that. And for your impervious issue, would some porous paving in some areas be able to be amenable to do that? I don't know if that's.
So we were originally proposing some porous pavement to mitigate the impervious coverage requirement for zoning.
Okay.
Appears that the zoning determination is that would not constitute
Not
a
so.
mitigation.
Oh, okay.
So we will likely be eliminating that porous asphalt area. We're going to look back at the stormwater management design and see if it makes sense to maintain some of that just from a stormwater management perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But it's likely that will be eliminated with the next submission also.
You can also ask the zoning board for an interpretation of the zoning administrator's decision if you feel strongly that it would go toward your impervious. And even if it's not a 1-for-1 or something like that, I mean, the ZBA might consider the fact that there's impervious pavement, permeable pavement toward the variance. So something to think about.
Lisa, can I ask you
Yeah,
a
I
question?
thought that would be.
If they took a portion of it, like say, some of the parking area, and had some of it like gravel or something like that, would that consider then as a non-pervious, or like a pervious, would it be pervious or not?
Gravel is considered impervious.
Is it really?
Yes.
Because
Even
it
though water
compacts
can get
over time.
through?
that can't really get through. It can't really get through the material that they have to use to create a parking surface.
Really, because it's not cement.
Yeah, but it's a well-graded material that compacts very tightly.
So what would be something similar to gravel, not cement, that could be used?
Pavers, I suppose. I would be hesitant to consider permeable pavement to be a non-impervious surface because it requires maintenance. And if that maintenance ever doesn't happen, it's just regular pavement.
If the sand gets in and fills up the
Right.
holes.
Okay.
All right, as Lisa said, it's something to, I don't know, when you go to the ZBA, you guys can discuss it.
You think that pavers might have a better shot, though?
Pavers, but you're gonna have less, you have to account for the open area.
Right.
But that, I would be more likely to consider that than pavement.
Okay.
All right. I did have a couple other things. So you said the backup alarms are not gonna be an issue, you don't think? The type of alarms that are on these vehicles?
It's just when the forklifts are backing up, there's the safety requirement,
Right.
OSHA and all that.
Some of those can be fairly annoying too.
Yeah, so we specifically, had those tested, and that was where we were, that's, and they're in the package that we submitted the results of the test.
Okay, yeah, I did read through that, but, all right.
Carl, could I just ask a follow-up in relation to that? So do you ever have like customers with large trucks coming to pick up, or do they generally, it's like dropping off? I'm just thinking of the backup noise and like the really loud ones that can be really annoying, Like I understand it's your stuff, your forklifts that you're operating on a daily basis, you have control over that, but you've said to the extent you've got outside people coming in, you can't control that. And I'm assuming like drop-offs isn't throughout the day, like your backlift or your smaller equipment would be. So for people picking up, do you ever have like large trucks coming in that would be going into the back that are there to pick up?
Contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the larger of the trucks are delivering supplies, and what gets picked up is in smaller vehicles.
In the front.
A lot of it's in the front too. The other thing about the noise is, where the yard is more than the distance there. I don't have the numbers in my head, and we can bring that for next time. But is not only far enough away from the residential boundary, but those apartments are also vertically. The difference is 45 feet in greater. So you have the benefit of a couple hundred feet on grade, plus the 45 feet. So I think, so our numbers meet the requirement of the ordinance, but you have some other components that also help benefit that. But we'll bring back that information on the trucks.
Okay, yeah, and it's not like that's going on throughout the day, your deliveries, like I wouldn't imagine, right? Or even on a daily basis.
Right, that's right, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, and my last question is, the dumpsters is for trash, or do you separate like C and D kind of stuff and do that differently than regular trash, or is it?
There really isn't any C and D. I mean, they're, again.
And it's just all these type of materials and shingles and whatnot. I don't know if some of that
I'll come back with specifics on that. I think mostly that could be, from, the way things are packaged, throwing away packaging or something like that, or there's an office operation, so there's probably debris from that office operation.
Yeah.
There's gonna be recycling there anyway, but I can answer that more directly.
I was just curious. It's a lot of construction materials, and if anything gets recycled that way with C and D versus regular trash. All right.
Ready? I move the planning board determine the proposed Erie Materials Inc. 657 Sheaf Road project would not have a significant adverse impact on the environment, and that no environmental impact statement will be required for the reasons set forth in the secret negative declaration for an unlisted action dated April 20th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded for seeker. Called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
I move the planning board defer action on this application pending a revised submittal and subject to the following. Respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, and said response to be reviewed by the planning department as adequacy, inclusiveness, inclusive of, but not limited to the following 1 through 14.
Second.
Moved and seconded to defer, called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, we'll see you in June.
Yeah, thank you for the conversation.
Thank you.
Couple of deferrals or adjournments. 8 Tucker Drive, I move the planning board to adjourn the public hearing to May 18th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And 76 Ireland Drive Extension, I move the planning board to adjourn the public hearing to May 18th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And I now move that we allow public comment on other items on tonight's agenda. And please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Is there anyone left who wish to comment on remaining items on tonight's agenda? We have Salt Point Center, Cotton Way, and 68 Van Wagner Road.
Yes, hello?
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 Yes.
Hi, Michelle, go ahead. Which application are you speaking to?
Well, I know that you guys adjourned the 76 Ireland extension, but I just wanted to ask if there's going to be notification by mail to the residents, like there are, in other communities, that they don't, people who don't watch these things or take time to do that because maybe they're working at 5 o'clock or whatever the heck the story is. We only post this information in hearings on our website, and there are people within the impact areas, even though I know it's a heavy industrial, but these people won't be informed, and it is a heavy industrial, but it doesn't mean that these invisible toxins that will be put forth aren't going to go over the industrial zoning area. They absolutely will.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. So Eric Holman is actually the planner for this project. It is adjourned for this evening, so it won't be heard. The application was circulated with a public hearing notice as prescribed by our code.
Yeah, that's all.
Adjournments are public, and adjournments are public so people know when the next hearing is. Do you have any questions or comments regarding items in section C and below that are not public hearings? In the remaining 30 seconds or so?
All right.
No.
Thanks, Michelle. Yep, this one's being adjourned every month until they do something.
Okay.
All right.
So people are not going to be informed, is that correct? By mail?
I don't think
That are
that's
within 25.
I don't believe that's
I'm
the
sorry?
town policy. Unless they're
Right, and it should be.
adjacent, if they're adjacent to it. They will be
Yeah,
informed.
just said, it should be. That's all. Have a good evening.
You
Bye.
too. All right, Salt Point, I move we resume the meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Salt Point Center is up next. Welcome, guys, back.
Good evening, Jeff Kane.
Evening, Jacob Waxel, owner.
Ken Casamento, LRC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board. This is our second submission, working with Jacob's second submission on this particular project, related to working within the Salt Point Center zoning regulations and creating a new project here at the intersection of really Ennis and Salt Point Turnpike. The last time we submitted, I think it's fair to say no one liked the plan. We have it up here just as a memory, and to be really candid here, I think the more we looked at it, we didn't like it either, right? As it didn't grow on us. We heard a lot of comments. We heard a lot of good comments. After we submitted and we got comments from the board. We heard feedback. We then had a meeting with staff and the chair and we got some good feedback. We think about how to better develop this site. And so we went back to the drawing board. We were held up for a while about with DOT, getting some feedback from them about did they want to see a roundabout here or another leg on the signal, and they said they wanted to see a roundabout. So you'll see that incorporated into the concept plan documents here. We instead of having the commercial building and then some residential buildings, these are now all three mixed-use buildings. They all have commercial below and residential above.
Two are mixed use.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Two are mixed use. One is full commercial.
So they have no light.
Right.
The two mixed use, and this is a full residential.
That's all
Full
residential.
Right, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's clarifying.
We also worked through some technical issues with the town engineer and with the zoning officer about how we would work within the floodplain and how we'd manage stormwater from the site. And we didn't present those details, but we now have a path forward about what we need to specifically give to the town in terms of technical response about how to address those issues. So we have this. We have a plan that we like a lot better. We hope you'll like better as well. You'll notice we went up, not out. Again, these are two of the buildings are 4 stories, and one is a 3-story. What's permitted in this zone are 3 stories with a limit of 45 feet. One of the comments from your zoning administrator, and she and I talked. She had just transposed the numbers, but really what's permitted is 45 feet and 3 stories. So we don't need a height variance, but for 2 of the buildings, we would need a variance to go up an extra story. And we purposely wanted to keep this within the height restrictions of the zone here, and worked hard with the architecture to do that. So again, we've created buildings that have frontage onto Salt Point Turnpike. They have double entrances for the commercial spaces. We've tried to make it more outward spacing rather than just parking in front and buildings behind. We've tried to really screen the parking with landscaping, and I'm sure there's more we can do there. But really, I think what we're focused on tonight is we'd like to hear your feedback on this layout, and we would then take that and to the best we can and start to, if it makes sense, develop a more detailed plans for more detailed review and comment.
All right, thanks, Jeff. When you mentioned building, I think it's building 2, did you say the businesses would also have entrances from the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay.
These both front.
Okay.
Salt Point, and there's some on the back space.
Okay, that wasn't clear on
The other
plan
building
I'm
just
seeing.
fronts
So.
out, obviously.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening. Nice to meet you guys, some of you guys again. Just wanted to basically, looking forward to work with you guys and take that intersection and the Salt Point Center and basically turn it into a beautiful project. Looking forward to work with the town and together make this a beautiful future for the next, for not only for this site, future for the town as well, for other projects to come along.
This is kind of a discussion, guys, so if you want to
So
chime in.
one of the things that
but
we
I think,
didn't get into is the wetlands and the floodplain here. We're not within any wetlands or near any of that, but we
Yeah.
are within the floodplain. We do have a floodplain consultant that has been working with us to help set the elevations correct on the buildings and work about filling in there. We have, as Jeff pointed out, we have a path forward. But before we go through and over detail it based on our response at the last one, we wanted to make sure we're on the same page with everyone here with with what Jacob and the team has put together, both in architecture as well as the design overall.
Could you also just maybe address where you are? It's a little unclear as to what this status of the roundabout is. Our traffic consultant had some specific design comments on that, but it's not clear. Is this dictated by the DOT? Is this now what it's going to be? Is it something which is in flux? Is the configuration subject to change? What's the status of the roundabout? Because that, to some extent, that relates to some of the design comments.
So actually, on his way out, Phil Greeley was there before. He actually just got comments today from DOT.
Okay.
So he's going back and
Can we
forth.
go take a look at that?
But it is going to be a roundabout. The specifics of it are still working through the details with the DOT. As you know, that doesn't happen in minutes, but it will be a roundabout. This has been shown and addressed. Although in view here, it doesn't necessarily have the trees and the stuff in the island, because as you know, with the one before, the DOT has some responses to that in their requirements.
Kind
So
of visibility and such.
Right, we'll probably have a little more paving in there and whatnot. But the overall design and shape and orientation of where the ins and outs are from the DOT's discussion with Phil.
All right, that's good. I think a roundabout's a good idea, but it is a busy intersection, so it has to be done right.
Right.
Eric, did you have anything further you want to say?
We talked about this a little bit at the field trip. You know, you have our thoughts. We thought the county planning had some good comments. It's a good start. You know, we were hoping to see, I guess we thought there could be some incremental changes to it, perhaps maybe some creative out-of-the-box ideas. It'd be nice to come up with some to maybe reduce the parking further and provide, it seems like there's a lot packed into a very limited development area on the site, which creates a lot of problems, which creates a lot of challenges for circulation and parking and the relationship with the buildings to make it a good site. So among other out-of-the-box things we suggested was, you know, should the applicant be looking perhaps at changes, proposed changes to the Salt Point Center regulations, which are creating some of these constraints. There's no retail use proposed.
So you approach the town
something
board,
that will make it a better live work kind of development, similar to the others that have been successful in the town.
Eric, can I ask a question?
So if you worked with the town board, you may be able to add some retail components, for example.
Or maybe a more pure, because the need to generate a minimum amount of commercial seems to be driving some of the layout, and if we don't know if that's a problem for you or a benefit, but that's in part dictated by the SPC regulations.
Sure.
And then county also, there was also some comments about how the circulation is a little bit questionable and the buildings don't appear to relate to one another too well. Maybe perhaps also because it wasn't a fuller set of plans, for example, like we didn't know the building connected to the
Yeah,
street.
but it's still in the early phases.
Correct.
Before you flush
So I
things
think
out.
it's great to approach, you know, with some questions and for the board to have some discussion and provide feedback.
I mean, I like the architecture look at the buildings. That does look nice.
Joan, did you have a question?
I just had a quick question. Eric, you wrote in your comments about a commercial non-retail use. What does that mean? I feel like I should know it, but it's not coming to me.
Well, for example, a restaurant.
Okay.
A restaurant is a service business, for example.
Okay, so that would be commercial non-retail? Okay.
Like a barber shop.
An office space.
Or an office, right.
A real
Okay,
estate.
well, yeah, I was thinking doctor's office. I wasn't sure if that's
medical
what you were referring to.
offices,
Okay,
mhm.
all right. So not where you would go and you would shop and buy things and
Retail
walk
is
out.
right, shopping and buying things, and there's
Okay.
lots of other commercial uses that are not go in and buy something.
Gotcha.
They've depicted
And I think for clarity, we've shown commercial spaces on the first floor. If they're generically labeled as retail, it's not meant to be necessarily retail. They are meant to be commercial, and we would expect there to be a mix of retail and non-retail uses. And I think the vision here was meant to meet the expectations of the Salt Point Center zone to have mixed use, have neighborhood businesses that meet needs of this specific area here. So it becomes driven by the area, not driven by the needs of Chipotle.
As long as the, I mean, I like the outdoor patio, the outdoor dining you're showing there on the plans.
We're also looking at the roof of that being an amenity to the tenants as an outdoor area to go on both sides of the building, of that, the one side building.
The roof.
So Ken, how?
This section of that, so when you look at the building, there's an outdoor area that the building.
I thought that was a restaurant on the other side.
Well,
that's on the bottom.
Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And that would have outdoor space that was with it.
That's
But
on the
the
bottom
space
with the-
above the restaurant.
Above it, this,
Okay.
yeah, so the second.
And possibly if you did have a restaurant there, you'd have to figure out that area, because when you have food trucks coming in and stuff like that, the way you have it right now, that would not work
For delivery.
for delivery. Yes.
Understood.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so the restaurant seating's down here, but this would be for tenants to use the deck out there.
Yeah, Carl, I have a couple of comments.
Yep.
Jeff, I think you said that you have a floodplain consultant that you're working with?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so you'll come back on, because I think this is a 12-acre site, and this particular thing is what, 3-4 acres is
Correct.
approximately? And so there is a potential use of that other area, maybe a recreational?
Correct.
Et cetera. Okay, so
Yeah,
I'll
no,
wait on that.
Yeah, and I think that's right, Rocco. The floodplain area, we're not developing in the floodplain area, right? So we're staying out
Right,
of
I
that.
understand that.
Right, but you know, we've certainly talked internally about what can be the best use of that area as a passive, probably maybe it's active, but probably not active. Certainly not any type of pervious surface on it. But can we in fact use some of that area? And we're certainly open to that. We think it's a neat amenity for the
Walkway,
Yeah.
grass walkway, pathway.
Well, I was going to ask
path.
about the walkway. How close are you to the walkway? I mean,
We
you're
are
pretty
proposing
close.
a connection. It is.
Okay, you are proposing a connection.
We are
Okay.
proposing a
Going up
connection,
there.
correct.
And that other figure eight-like structure, is that just a walk
It
around?
was just to show that we were looking at some passive type
Okay.
recreation in that area.
All right.
Rocco, here's the,
It would
the
require
walk-
moving the
the
whole
path up
package.
to
Oh,
the
okay,
walkway.
good.
I'm
Yeah, I
sorry?
wasn't sure what
That
that
one
was.
building
Okay.
is really close to Salt Point Turnpike.
Well, we were when we initially met with staff, we were encouraged to pull the building closer to Salt Point Turnpike. That was one of the direction that we were given. It's why we really pulled that up.
Because you're gonna have residents in there, right?
Right, sure. On the
It's gonna be
noisy,
noisy.
on the
It's a
second
lot of,
floor,
that's a busy road, Salt
Right.
Point.
Not on the street
I live
floor,
there.
but above. Yeah, right.
Another
Very
reason
busy
why
road.
we asked them to do that was because you have the floodplain that's in the back. And so if they put any parking in the back, or, you know, that building was a little close to that area. So you wanted to pull it forward so that there wasn't any issues.
I wouldn't wanna live that close to Salt Point Turnpike. Be noisy. And dangerous.
I mean,
We also didn't want the parking in the front yard,
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
that
That's
too.
where I was gonna
That
go.
too.
And the code particularly talks about not having parking in the front yard.
although I kind of agree with the county's comment to maybe move the building 1 to opposite of building 2, and then the parking closer to the west branch of the Salt Point Turnpike, if you know what I mean, so it'd be so you make a quad kind
Right, and you were talking about just kind of
of slide that
blocking those two elements, is that?
yeah, so slide that up so there'd be parking on the other side of it where
Little bit here,
the
little
restaurant
bit there.
is.
Yeah.
And that make it,
For
because
the
when
delivery.
that coming off the roundabout there, it's kind of an unusual conflict of traffic, I think, where you first come off the roundabout and you're right in front of building 1, but you're trying to get to one of the other buildings. It's a little bit
Yeah.
of a unusual
That's-
circulation
yeah,
pattern there.
That's good feedback, yeah.
That would actually solve one of my questions, is that I questioned how viable that patio was gonna be, because there's a retaining wall shown around the outside of the property
There
and
is.
along the floodway. So if you could move that back, that might actually make the patio a little more usable.
And as Nicole mentioned, they need to have some pavement around for restaurant delivery area.
And that would help by switching that to create a lane down in that area for deliveries near the restaurant. Nope.
Yeah,
All good feedback.
I had
That's
one-
why we're here.
I had one question too. Have you considered a bypass lane if you're coming southwest on Salt Point going towards the other roundabout? Because that's a busy turn in there within the roundabout, a bypass lane?
So the DOT controls the size of the roundabout and that nature, and they're gonna keep it small, similar to what is at the roundabout just there, which is a 1-lane roundabout. Once you get to 2-lane roundabouts, they get quite big.
No, it wasn't a 2-lane, just a bypass.
By Salt Point to bypass the whole. I think
At rush hour, there's a big crush of cars that come that way and get onto
I think the difficulty is with the intersection of our property there, because the bypass would then traverse right in front of it. If you're doing a bypass, I'll just switch to this picture.
This is one of the
No,
problems
no,
with
no,
the,
no,
one of the
no,
problems with
the other way.
one of the problems with the
From the
bypass.
From the west lake to the south lake.
Right. One of the
By the
problems with the
gas station.
bypass is it really makes it dangerous for pedestrians. You don't have that, you don't have the safe crosswalks, you don't have the slower traffic, you don't have that kind of traffic calming that you get. And when you're trying to do a neighborhood development, you really wanna be careful about controlling the traffic and really be careful about having those defined crosswalks to keep people protected. So I think understanding that, yes, it'll allow people to zip by, I fear that's what would happen, right? People would zip by, and that's, we'd have a.
Well, there's actually a bypass lane there now, and I think.
Yeah, that's what
I think it would, I mean, Innis is a 30-mile-an-hour, 35-mile-an-hour road, you know, with the bypass lane, that's gonna encourage people to go faster than that.
Okay. I mean, the one that came to mind is that by the Arlington High School, is the roundabout they put in there so people can get into the high school or the buses. Maybe it's mainly for bus traffic perhaps and morning stuff where it's heavy use, but.
Right, and with those roundabouts working in concert, it should bleed off the traffic between them at a fairly steady pace and not have the same
the
type
ebb
of
and flow.
backup that a signal will give you.
Yeah, the other one to the west is working really well, that.
Right,
south-
what a
south-
change that made in that,
Oh my
that
God, what a
intersection,
difference.
yeah. that's-
It's hard to see there too, but I see here you have another entrance off Salt Point Turnpike.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
There's a right in, right out off the Salt
Yeah.
Point, correct.
That could eliminate some of the people going through the roundabout.
So, let's see what else. Yeah, I guess that's my biggest thing, is the building orientation, make that quadrangle kind of effect.
Yeah, that's.
And I like the architecture, I don't know what you guys think of that.
Yeah, I like it too.
architecture's pretty nice.
And I like the walkway in the back. I think that's kind of a neat feature. I like it. And I think, yeah, I agree. If you move it down, then you've got better access to that building. It'll give you more flexibility in the future for planning.
So we, one of the county comments about parking and number of spaces and stuff, we're amenable to reducing some of that parking in there, but we want to make sure with shared parking that everyone's comfortable, you know what I mean, in that arrangement.
Yeah, I mean, the old sharing of people, be at work and then coming home, or a lot of people work from home now too, so you have to, I don't know if that changes that equation a little bit, but.
Right, this may be a site that has land banked some of
That's
that, and
right.
again, and if it's a problem for Jacob and his tenants, then.
Then yeah,
Taking a
Yeah,
section
right.
of parking,
Right.
and land banking that parking, so that
Yeah.
it's reserved, but we don't have to do it now, so that we can reduce some of that.
Yeah, you got a lot of hills there. You're gonna flatten it out, all that dirt could go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some relief right in the kind of in the middle there, but it's not too bad. Right. It's
pretty,
This is maybe a crazy idea, but, preface it with that.
Well,
I wonder if it's possible to do overflow parking with porous pavement, permeable pavers in the floodway. Utilize that, because it's not gonna obstruct flow. I don't know how you treat it, that's the question.
That's the only question.
Yeah.
Or, well, floodplain perhaps, but floodway is
Yeah.
a different thing that.
Right.
That'll wash away. Yeah.
We're in the flood zone as we're filling, but even if we went to the floodplain or floodway to put porous structure that could pose as overflow, the question would be, how do we meet the requirement for treatment? Because anything underground would.
It would almost have to be permeable pavement. That's
Right.
not the only thing you could do.
Right.
I don't know, I
Yeah.
just thought.
I'm sure that there are plans for EV infrastructure there?
We
For
will end up
both,
putting them in, yes.
Yeah, all right, so you'll come back with all of that?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Dog parks?
Correct.
Okay.
We're just trying to get the concept down before
you know, we had, on the old plan that you see below us, you know, fully developed the plan and went full tilt on all the design and the details, and then we were met with, you know, we don't like the plan. So rather than going through that at expense for Jacob, we've been working in the background trying to nail down both the design, the DOT, meeting with staff to get to something we felt was the right plan for the project that hopefully the board would be agreeable to, so that we can then go back and put some of our hats on and finish up that design and come in with all those details.
Okay.
did you give any thought to, what would it take to, reduce the amount of surface area within that development footprint, to reduce the amount of surface area that has to be devoted to parking? Either increased height for more units or parking any consideration of parking, where there's relief parking partially underneath the structure on one side of perhaps the building on the hill?
We've looked at
or other mechanisms?
We've looked at the under building parking, and the costs get extremely difficult. Between you end up almost having to go multiple stories of parking to make it come back cost-wise, and then the building gets up super high. We even looked at, because of the reliefs, potentially going down with the parking underground, so to speak. And the costs are just prohibitive, unfortunately, in that environment.
We require all the tenants to have a smart car and then fit them all in.
E-bikes, everyone comes to e-bikes.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice, I mean, so much parking takes up the asphalt, so there's not a lot of space for like a green amenity or a playground or what, I don't know what you're targeting to
Well,
look
again,
at,
you know, it does have the entire open area you see off.
Yes, he's doing
It's
that.
there, and if we can work through the details of a playground in the floodplain type thing,
that
you know,
should
if there's water, it's a swimming pool. If there's not, it's a playground. So, you know, those kind of things that,
And it's a rare occurrence, but it does happen.
Right, but it gives a lot of green when you really look at it on a bigger scale. This has a lot of outdoor amenity for people because of that field.
Right.
It has a hill
That's
to walk
true.
around.
That's
in.
true. Yeah, you got the whole, and the path up to
Correct.
the rail trail there.
And the rail trail's right there. So, you know, what we're trying to utilize is the developable areas is most effective as possible, and then really look at those other areas as how can we get creative in those to utilize those with, like you said, you know, we can do the walking path. You can do an active walking path with pieces and parts of jungle gym, a little piece along the way, type things that don't affect the floodplain or floodway, really, at the end of the day.
And next to the rail trail, of course, you know, I'm gonna mention bike storage or bike racks, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I would, just in terms of Eric's comment about going higher or to eliminate the pavement, I would prefer to see lower buildings, even at the expense of having to have more pavement, you know, than trying to get a variance for something taller that doesn't fit in well with the overall area.
So one of the things that, and I glad you raised it, Joan, is we, understanding that we need, as shown, need a variance to go for an additional story on 2 of the buildings.
But that's just the story, you're
Right,
still
it's not
staying
a
under
story,
your
not a
height,
height. So
yeah.
I guess, so the question is the board reasonably supportive of that? Should we go to the ZBA before we come back to you next? Or if you could give us some feedback on that, it would be helpful to know where we're going in the design.
I'm supportive of staying under the height, even if it's another story, you know?
Yeah, I don't think I was too concerned in that area of the height. It's, I mean, the design you have kind of makes it, the architecture you have kind of makes it look,
So a question I would have about the height of the buildings is, you have to build up the site to raise it above the floodplain elevation, right?
Well, it's not necessarily building up. As you pointed out, it does a little of the undulations. The hill is above, that comes down.
Okay.
And then we fill in the hole that's just past the buildings between the houses to come up to a level. It's only a few feet higher, maybe 2 feet higher than what the road level, if I remember
So
correctly.
right, so compared to the road, where is the ground level gonna be?
It's only 1 or 2 feet higher. It's not that much higher.
So so thinking about it, driving by on Salt Point, it's gonna be the height of the building plus that 2 feet
Yeah.
so it's really
But
a
you
few
do
feet higher.
have those, apartment buildings down the road on the left-hand side. I mean, does anyone know what the height of those buildings are? I know that's considered city
Lakeview Arms.
Poughkeepsie,
Oh.
right? But what,
well, some of it's.
Lakeview Arms.
I mean, those are how many
Lakeview, Ridge.
stories?
The city.
Right down the street, if
The
you're
city
going
apartments?
towards the city,
Yeah.
you have the apartment buildings on the left-hand side.
I have it up.
They're only 3 stories?
Yeah,
Really?
I think so.
But there is like
I thought they were
6 or 7 story building
Yeah,
around the corner.
there's
Yeah.
quite a big, yeah, I got it right here. Hold on, I'll share the screen. Yeah, there you go. So Lakeview around the corner, this being our site right here.
That one.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at,
Yeah.
And even down Salt Point,
Oh, yeah,
but
there's
across
that
from the cemetery there.
Yeah.
That's not the one I was thinking, yeah.
that's a much taller
But
building,
down,
as you
but
pointed
down
out.
Yeah.
Innis Avenue, there's a lot of.
But that's
apartments.
farther away from the
Yeah.
road too.
Correct.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
You know. It's across the other
Creek
side.
Road.
I guess they're not too high there.
Well, that's what we're asking.
All right,
But is there a path for us to go to the ZBA before we come back here? Or is that?
Well, you wouldn't be able to get a decision from the ZBA because you don't have any plans and a neg deck, which you would need from this board.
but you can get a feel.
Is it a coordinated review?
It would be, I would think, because the ZBA would not want to undertake the seeker review for this project. They wouldn't want to be the first ones to do it.
But it
So,
would be, other projects have gone to the ZBA to feel them out if they're amenable before
Right.
before they come up with a design.
It would be great for us to go into them with a kind of an idea of where this board sits, though. You know what I mean? I would hate to go to the ZBA and say, they're not sure where they want. What
Yeah, I
do you
mean,
want?
ultimately, you need a variance. I personally don't have a problem with this height because there are other buildings which we just established that
Yeah,
are even
It's a good
taller
idea.
in the area, so.
Right. And I'm okay with it as well. As I said, your architectural style makes it look like a shorter building than it really is even, so.
Right.
So, right. So considering it's consistent with what Joan's saying, correct? What we're showing on the plans, we're not going for a height variance, we're going for a story variance. Everyone's kind of in that
Right,
same.
Right.
yeah.
Just so I was clear, thank you.
Yeah, we're good with that.
It gets confusing.
I would suggest that a rendering, at street level, where as you drive by those buildings would be a very good idea.
From Salt.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can do that.
and it may be a bit premature to bring that to the ZBA. I mean, I guess if that's your only variance that you'll be seeking, but, in the abstract, they're unlikely to have too much to say about it until they know that the planning board has vetted the plans in the driveway and nothing's gonna be moved and so on, and.
I do have this that came in just towards the end of the day. They were able to just so you can see an
there you
idea
go. That's
of what it looks like from the intersection.
Yeah.
It's nice.
That plan that came in, so.
Oh, okay, yeah, you can see what you're talking about
Right.
the rooftop
So,
access there on the side.
On the side of it,
Yep.
yeah, above the Barber Cafe, but also, you know, that fourth floor is hidden in the roof essentially.
Yeah, you've done tricks like that, you did at Eastdale, and so it looks.
It really looks
Just-
like the 3 stories are floating, and that was, I
Right.
thought the
Right.
architect
Yep.
here did
Mm-hmm.
a nice job to disguise it as a
Yeah, like,
4-story building.
And we, you know, we also, the architect also listened to the idea of trying to not create such a face, flat face. So
yeah, it's.
really worked
it's
with
a
that.
beautiful.
Right, one of
building.
these really shows that relief between the buildings. I don't know if it's really, if you can really see it in those drawings or not, but there's a lot of relief.
Yep, and the balconies you got there,
You can look down,
much better than the first go-round.
right, you can see it in here, the relief.
Yep.
That's deep, right?
I've got no,
Good use of land.
I've got no issues with that, and good to.
I might suggest if, when when you produce a new layout and maybe some slightly more detailed plans, would it make sense to have like another workshop meeting with a couple board representatives and staff and maybe consultant to go through it before making an actual submittal to the board?
Absolutely.
Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Is that?
Just to see if there's anything else, but I think just moving that building is a big part of it, and looks good. Let's see. Parking, as we say, is
Right.
a
Okay.
concern. However, you can make that flow better.
We'll take another look at it and see if we can rearrange it there and
Yes.
arrange with you, Eric, to get a meeting, an offline meeting, and we'll talk through it.
I don't know if more one-ways would make it, less pavement, less easier to fit it all in. I don't know.
And we'll take a look at the parking requirements in the code, and we'll talk with Phil and see what makes a reasonable sense of potential reduction for shared use in space.
Right.
And/or looking at, as we said before, a potential land bank.
Some land banking as well,
component
yep.
As well.
And like you're doing,
And we'll look into the floodplain overflow potentially too.
I thought what you did with the Vassar faculty, there was a separate little room even for
Right.
bike storage.
Yep.
But since this is right on top of the rail trail, I don't know if that's something you'd consider, but.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I think it's a
Thank you.
Thank you.
nice looking plan. Next up is Cotton Way lot line revision. Who's here for that? Cotton Way.
That is me.
Thanks for
Roland
hanging in
Bloomer.
there.
Yes, very much. I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to appear via Zoom. It's very accommodating. It fit my schedule, so thank you very much. A little background on this matter. This is a resubmission. It was originally brought before the board, the planning board last year. It was submitted to the ZBA for a variance that was granted. Can you guys hear me still?
Yes.
Yeah, if you could speak up maybe a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. I'll speak into the computer. It was back in September 22, the variance was granted by the ZBA. The property itself, 14 Cotton Way, was purchased by my client approximately 2 years ago. He bought that from Mr. Cotton, who actually lives across the dirt driveway at 11 Cotton Way. That is where the piece of the property is coming from. The minor lot line adjustment is for about 464 square feet. When we bought the property, it was unbeknownst to either party, the seller or the buyer, that the actual house that was existing on the property was over the boundary line. The purpose of this lot line adjustment is simply to bring the property within the boundary line of 14 Cotton. I understand from the comments for the review of the submission tonight, the main points are where the water lines are, where the septic system is, the easement, and whether anything's affected regarding the maintenance, as well as an old foundation that's on the property in the rear. If it pleases the board, I'll just address each one of them concurrently, and then we could open for questions or discussions as to whatever I could answer further for you guys.
Yeah, that sounds good. We don't want the new line going through the septic field or something.
Yes, exactly. So, do you guys have the lot line drawing in front of you to be
Yes.
able to look at? Would you like me to pull it? Okay. So where you see the triangle, the lot line adjustment at the northern boundary of the existing house, for ease of conversation, we'll just say north is the 11 Cotton, south is 14 Cotton, and the private roadway runs from west to east onto the property. The lot line simply adjusts out to allow the property to be, the building to be within the property. The current water lines that I understand from comments from the water department for the prior submission are not affected by where this lot line adjustment occurs. If you look closely, the lot line adjustment actually doesn't even enter into the easement area, which still remains intact. It just abuts up to it at that point on purpose so that nothing was disturbed legal wise or deed wise, just essentially to move the boundary line around the building that is there. The septic is noted on the map. It's at the southern eastern part of the property, in the middle more so, but as compared to where the building is on the property, it's south and east. It's about 30 foot off of the house, and it's an approximate 1,000 gallon tank that they marked on the map. What it actually is a 1,250 gallon tank that my client had serviced. So we know exactly where that is, and that's pretty close, and not exactly where it's marked on the map there. So completely away from the area that's being disturbed by the lot line adjustment. And if anything, it adds more property to the current 14 Cotton Way, so it wouldn't be an issue, in my mind at least. And I apologize, I'm looking off the screen because I'm looking at the drawing itself. The easement, the perpetual easement.
If I could interrupt you, where's the septic system for the northerly house?
The 11 Cotton, that I'm going to have to find out for you, and I apologize it's not on here. I did speak and know from the neighbor that it's nowhere near that. However, obviously it's not on the map, so I'm sure you guys would like to know where it is on the map, and I will get that information.
Yes, please. Yep.
Absolutely. Just make a note here. Okay, the perpetual easement runs, and as I said, essentially is unchanged. That is I believe you guys visited the property, or members of the board did. It's essentially a dirt road off of Van Wagner Road that's been there as far as I know. That runs all the way back to the end of the properties, these are the back two parcels on that drive. The old foundation that is referenced there, it looks like it was probably built 50 years ago, if not more. It's not anything you could build upon. There's grass growing in and out of it. So it's not anything that would be used. If the board would like that addressed, I will talk to my client, and I'm sure that can be addressed so it's no longer an issue or there, whatever the board pleases. And I think I touched on most things there. The DCD, BCH would need to sign off permission to file on the map, obviously, and I believe their questions or comments were related specifically to the water lines as well, that they would like to see it on the map itself so they know it's not affected in the area that we're proposing for the lot line adjustment. And that's pretty much all I have. If there's anything else I could try to answer for you, I'd be more than willing. If you have any comments you'd like to throw my way, I'd be more than happy to hear them.
All right, thanks. Kristen?
Thank you for the overview. So the board saw this application, as it was indicated, about a year ago in June. There are pretty much just standard lot line revision notes that were cut and paste from our town code. So we're going to be looking for documentation that's updated to include the 2023 dates. That's in my recommendation memo. Just something to point out, you might have heard me address this earlier with a different applicant, but the time limit associated with filing the lot line, you have 60 days in our code. We actually do grant up to 1 additional time extension. So what we've been doing, and in this case, I've actually gone ahead and drafted a resolution for the planning board to include that 1 additional time extension. So you have, in effect, you would have 120 days from tonight to get your paperwork in order and filed. And again, I would just err on the side of caution in terms of timing. You know, again, we don't want to run into an instance where you have 20 minutes left to get it to the county to file. I'm not kidding, that has happened at least twice this year so far. So if we could avoid that, it'd be appreciated on our end. And then I did actually reach out. I know that you had documented that the water and sewer, you know, that there were no concerns. It's not that I distrust you, but I also did speak directly to the Department of Health. And I did have them put in writing that they are looking, because ultimately you do have to receive their permission to file. They are looking for you to document the existing water service lines and septic systems on the map to be filed. That's in a comment memo that was dated April 11th, so the board has that in their packet. I just wanted to point it out. This way, you know, again, you're not perhaps wasting resources on fighting an uphill battle instead of just documenting them on the map. Because I know sometimes the delay can happen in the review at that office, so they have a lot going on, as we all do. So again, this is a type 2 action requiring no further environmental review. So there's a secret resolution and also a resolution, if the board so chooses, to grant a conditional lot line revision approval with that time extension that I spoke to.
Yep. All right, thanks, Kristen. Anything, Andy?
You know, I think everything's pretty much covered in my letter. I guess I do question, the only question I have is, there's this perpetual easement for ingress and egress. I wonder if there's an associated driveway agreement, or common driveway agreement?
I do not believe there is. If the board would like to see one, I can talk to the people on the road to see if that's something we can address and get for your review.
Do we need that,
I think
Lisa?
we should probably.
The town doesn't necessarily need it, but it will certainly make your lives a lot easier, because we're running into other issues now about what can happen in an easement, and it's just, if you can get it, I think it would be beneficial to your client. It's not a mandate from the town, it's a strong encouragement.
Understood, thank you.
Thanks. All right, thanks, Andy. Just I had a question quick. That old foundation, is that just from like an old shed or an old barn, do you know?
From what I can tell, yes, I believe so. It's not very large, and it looks to be in a position where one would have like a storage shed there on top of it, yes.
All right. Go around the board, anybody have comments on this?
No comment.
No comment?
No comment.
No comment.
No, I guess we're ready to move forward then.
Okay. I move the planning board determine that the proposal meets the criteria for seeker type 2 action pursuant to seeker part 617.5C16, and no further environmental review is required.
Second.
Moved and seconded for seeker. Called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
I move the planning board grant conditional lot line revision approval and also grant a one-time 60-day time extension as permitted by town code of said approval from Monday, June 19th, 2023 forward to Friday, August 18th, 2023, subject to the following 1 through 6. Mark out the septic.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, good luck. Get the paperwork in.
Thank you very much.
As Kristen said, and you're good to go. Next up is 68 Van Wagner. I'm gonna take over. I gotta do it next.
Sure. Okay, so 68 Van Wagner Road. seeker declaration of lead agency intent, site plan, and special use permit review.
Thank you very much. Robert Turner, Tinkleman Architects. I'm representing the client in regards to this project. Once here back in 2021 to review the development of site plan for a change of use in the special use permit application. The property, of course, is located on Taft Avenue between Taft Avenue and Van Wagner. It currently is a two-story building with non-conforming apartments on the second floor, and the tenant currently is operating without permission a car detailing facility on the first floor, and so he's looking to get this legalized. That's the whole process of what we're here for. Currently, it's up. So currently, when we were before you last time, one of the biggest concerns that was coming across from everybody was the use of chemicals, any type of painting that might be occurring within the building because of the apartments above. And so what the client has decided to do was to take all those activities that use those types of chemicals, which would be your paints, your thinners, your lacquers, that would be producing those odors or fumes, and they decided to move them out into a separate building on the site. And so what they're proposing to do is to construct a prefabricated metal building. Within that building will be a paint booth. And so anything that they need to do, they basically will take the part off the car, go to the paint booth, spray it, it dries, and then they bring it back and then they reinstall it on the car. Anything that's happening within the building is going to be nothing more than automotive cosmetic work, dent removal, and buffing, detailing, and pressure washing, cleaning the car up, and vacuuming the interior. So, as I said, all chemicals and stuff have been completely removed from the building. So in order to address some of the other issues that came up, we've removed any type of parking from the front of the building, and we've shifted everything around to the north side. And so we're able to work with parking along the northern property line, as well as tuck parking in adjacent to the side of the building. This allowed us to get the paint booth in so that we were able to access it, and as well as provide for our dumpster enclosure. Between those two structures was going to be the gate that would allow then the client to be able to access, we call it the side yard. Basically, if he has a car that he's working on that might take more than a day, or it has to have some downtime, he'll pull the car around and put it back there and then bring it back, in front, and into the work area when he needs to. So, I know we've gotten the response comments from the review, and what we will end up by doing for coming back in front of you next time, we like the idea of shifting the handicap parking space back, and of course it does lose 2 spaces, but as we have stated before, this is really not a high customer parking type of facility. People show up in their car, they get picked up, their car then goes inside, then a few hours later they come back and they pick their car up. So there's really not a whole lot of need for a significant amount of parking. I did note, I made note for myself that I do need to correct the parking count, because the current parking count was based upon the building itself. It didn't include the paint booth.
Paint booth, yeah.
And so the paint booth building would bring a requirement of 10 spaces for the commercial use. So we would consider one of the options that Eric had made in tucking one space in against the southern property line, where we currently have our snow storage removal area. That could be readjusted so that we still are able to obtain some snow removal in that location. We would be requesting a waiver from the board for the remaining spaces, which I think would be a total of 4 that we would be looking for. And so we would like to maintain the 4 spaces along the property line, the 1 handicap space, and then the one on the southern property line.
All right.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. I know the client wanted me to just state to you that he is a small business, and it's not like there's a large number of clients coming through on a daily basis. Typically, he handles maybe 2 or 3 cars a day. So there's not a lot of activity going on. We will be taking a look at some of the comments that Eric has made about trying to reorient the parking spaces along the northern side to see if we can pick up a little bit of the buffer area that should be on that side of the property. Also, as indicated by the zoning administrator, when we had last had a meeting back in December, this building was, the paint booth building was being referred to as an accessory structure. So that is how I developed the site plan, and keeping the building 11 feet off the property line and maintain that setback for an accessory building. She has then corrected her determination and said that this is part of the primary use, so it would be considered part of the primary building, I guess you want to say. It occurs in 2 separate structures, so we would need to either 1, go for a variance, or 2, shift it 25 feet off the property line. I've made this condition obvious to the client. At this point in time, when we look at how we adjust the property, we're going to make a determination, but if necessary, we will go in front of the zoning board to
Yeah, it'd be tough to move it 25 feet probably.
Yeah.
You're right. And if you were to go in front of the zoning board, you could also ask them for their determination as to whether it's an accessory structure or not.
Okay.
Which is another option.
Correct, so.
So if they determine that, then they wouldn't need a variance.
Right.
Okay.
Then the other thing that we're going to be incorporating into the site, as Eric had recommended, in the location up along the Taft Avenue where the guide rail is, we will be introducing a landscaping bed there. And so that way, as Eric had pointed out, people are not going to be tempted to park a car in that area, because we're going to be increasing that circulation area through there, and you don't want to be obstructing that with vehicles and stuff. So that's something that we will be incorporating the next time we come in front of you. Other than that, we will be addressing again all the comments that we've gotten, in writing regarding the other issues.
All right, thank you. Eric?
Sure. This application was last in front of the board, where a similar application was before you in October 2021. This is effectively a new application. That application was never circulated. This one, however, is ready to be circulated for seeker lead agency, and that's the resolution you have before you tonight. No other action would be needed. The application would be for seeker review for site plan and also a special use permit for the motor vehicle repair. You have our comments, Bob addressed most of them, it's late, so I'm glad you're receptive to the main thing we were thinking was the layout could be improved with regard to the parking. The parking seemed to be not terribly important. So I'm glad to hear the applicant is receptive to making it a safer site and reducing the parking.
Yep, it's not a retail use where you're parking a lot of cars.
Yeah, I will say, it might be I would recommend that the applicant might consider, when you revise the layout, maybe sit down with staff in a couple of departments. I know the Arlington Fire District still has some pretty significant concerns regarding this project. And the building department, there are some hard lines in the building code, and it might be helpful to work through, as well as the zoning interpretation. It might be helpful, beneficial to work through some of those to make sure they're moving in the right direction before spending the time and money in front of the board again.
Correct.
That's a good
That was kind
idea.
of my
I mean,
thought.
I'm not sure the fire department understands that you've moved all the toxic stuff outside the building at this point, so it's certainly something to discuss with them ahead of time.
Correct.
And I guess I will also mention, there was, in our comments, it would also be helpful if the applicant would respond to all of the board. The board had several comments last time, and I didn't see answers to those, so I've reiterated
Correct. So
them
we'll
at
be
the end
picking
of our,
those up as well.
at the end of our comments.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Andy?
Yeah, so you have our comments. I think the things that stand out to me most probably are the turning movements. The refuse truck in particular crosses multiple parking spaces to get in and out. I'm not sure what you can do about that, but that is one
Now,
issue.
The whole Taft Avenue is all just open to that.
Yeah.
There's no
Right.
channelized
Right, understood.
area there.
And the other one really has to do, you said that he washes vehicles inside the building. I assume that means there's floor drains?
Yes, there's a floor drain in there, and one of the requirements is to incorporate an oil and water separator.
Yeah.
That came up last time.
Okay.
I've made the client aware of that, and it was indicated that we should be providing a note
Yep.
on the site plan for that.
Okay. Those are the two big ones for me.
All right, thank you. I guess we go around the board for comments on it. Ben, have anything?
My concern with this is ventilation and exhaust from the paint building. Is there some kind of scrubber and the exhaust
with
or something
the-
that it's not gonna emit, odors? There's neighbors right around that area, right?
There are several layers of filters and filtration within the system, and in speaking with the manufacturer, they stated that it takes out about 98% of all particles that do come out. You might have some fumes depending upon the types of paints or lacquers that are used. Some paints don't have as much odor, some do, and he did provide me a significant booklet of this information. I just have not gone through it to get all the nitty-gritty details regarding that. Because I know that was one of the issues why we did move the building away from the existing building, because we wanted to put a larger separation between the apartments and that facility.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know such a thing existed as such a separate kind of booth like this. So it sounds like it has filtration, but we'd like you to
So I'll be
at least
going
demonstrate
through that, I'll perusing this document, and I will definitely provide you with the information for the next submission.
They are definitely gonna put in an oil water separator.
Yes.
That's what I have right now.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Steve?
And just as an add-on, when you do come back, is there any, since it's a standalone building, sounds like something we don't use a lot, is there any outside monitoring of the air that needs to be done in case something does get out unexpectedly?
I'll look into that in regards to whether they do have that type of, I don't want to call it an alarm system, or if they do have any type of monitoring attached with their ventilation system.
Like a smoke detector or something that.
Yeah, something along
shows
those
that-
lines.
Yeah, that would alert them to stop painting.
That's all I had.
Okay.
My only comment is with respect to the fire department's comment. So I can't, I can't get on board if we've got the fire chief saying the use is inherently dangerous. So if there is a disconnect between what's been done and what he thinks is there, then yeah, it'd be great to see that.
Okay.
I think this solves a lot of what his concerns are, of fumes going up into the apartments, but we still have to.
Yeah, his comments remain though with this
Yeah,
application.
still
I
have
don't
to
know
make
if
sure
it's
he
a
understands
holdover
that
and it hasn't been
how it works.
updated. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've got a couple of comments. First, I echo what Jonas said here, but also going back to what will take place in the main building where the apartments are. You said that there's detailing, there's car washing, but I always thought that in detailing, there's still chemicals involved. Because whenever I have my car detailed, I go in and it smells like a new car. So, I mean, obviously, they had to use something in there.
There are chemicals that they do use, but they're not what would be classified as hazardous. There are standard cleaning chemicals that could be used in a normal house to clean furniture. And so it's not going to be something of hazardous.
Okay. That's the, now along with that, you said that that the separate building, if they need to do anything, they're going to remove it from the car, then go into the separate building. Will that be done in that main building?
When you mean by removing, it's like.
Well, those are your words, so that's why.
Basically, what will happen is if a car ends up by having a dent or a scratch on a fender, they'll take the fender off the car, and if they have to pop out a dent, they'll do that within their shop, within the existing building. They'll take it over to the paint booth building. That's where it will be painted, and then it goes through a drying process. And so by the time it's done, it's a finished product. They bring it back over and they reinstall it in the car.
Okay, but that implies auto body repair. Now, there's also welding involved in auto
They
body.
would not be getting involved in any welding or anything. They just, as
Well,
they said,
I'm not
it's
sure
gonna
that
be
we
dent
could
repair.
even prevent that, could we? I mean, once it gets approved, they can pretty much do what they want in there. Because, it's just, pulling a dent out is one thing, but sometimes you have to repair the fender and then take it off.
Well, I know
and get it painted rather than just, unless they pull the whole car into the outside building. Because there is welding involved, if they have to repair a floor or whatever, or if it's an accident, have to straighten out a frame or whatever, because once this gets approved, it's carte blanche because we can't monitor it.
When you start
Is
getting
it a special
involved in,
use, since it's a special use permit, Lisa, what are the parameters on what the board can or can't require?
I'm sure that if the applicant indicates that they're not going to do welding and they put a note on the plans with that, since it's, comes in from the applicant rather than a mandate from the board, that would be one thing. But if we're talking welding and there's safety concerns and fire concerns about, being underneath a residence and so on, we could make, I think it's within the board's purview to have that discussion, find out what the answers are, and then take whatever.
Because it does sound that they've made a significant investment in a paint booth, which I'm sure is not a couple of dollars. And so, I'm sure that they will want to maximize that and get return on their money.
And they probably could repaint the whole car in there too. not just
Right,
parts.
well, exactly. So if
Big enough for a car, yeah.
Yeah, if everything takes place in the paint booth, then that's okay. But if part of it takes place underneath where the apartments are, there could be risk there.
Yeah, definitely if you're dealing with, if you bring up welding, I know as part of the application, we did provide the scope of work that they are dealing with. There's nothing in here that stated that they would be doing anything anything with welding or body correction in regards to the frame of it. Everything is more of a cosmetic body part of the building, part of the car. So I
But
don't think
that's-
it's gonna be going that far, and as Lisa had stated, we could clearly identify the work that they will be doing and spell it out on the site plan, so that way.
Well, that would make me a little bit more comfortable, but right now, it appears that, you know, you can say you won't, but you can always go and do that. Because there's nothing there that we can monitor, I don't think, once it gets approved.
I think it's also just worth noting that the fire department too will probably be hard pressed to change their position regardless of what that is transcribed as. Only because, you know, I mean, is there a path to sprinklering the building? Is there any other option for the residents? I think that's, you know, a pretty.
They could sprinkle, but I don't think they want to. It is expensive to do that.
Right, but I'm saying if you want to be able to use the site, there should be some conversation there, because I don't think that the fire department is going to change their decision on that.
Yeah, you guys definitely need to talk to the fire
Oh,
department.
definitely.
But if
I've
there's
already
no-
had
but
to
if there's
call into
nothing-
them and, waiting for,
Just on the subject of sprinkling, I do recall hearing the building inspector talking with some other applicant who was facing sprinkling and the discussion of some piping that's now available for sprinkling at substantially reduced cost.
Yeah,
Like
they
an
have
order
like
of magnitude
Like
difference.
they have like a PEX type of thing for sprinkling now, where it's not a hardwired as much.
And then finally, is there anything that needs to be done in the current building, like it's on the ceiling to further protect the apartments above, additional fireproofing or whatever?
well, at this point in time, they're not looking to do any additional. I know we've spoken with Tim Sickles regarding that, and he stated that at this point in time, the building, meets code as it currently stands. If we do any alterations by adding additional layers of gypsum board to create additional fireproofing, we're gonna be opening up the building code to having to update the entire building. And so that's gonna be quite a major.
Right,
expense.
but again, okay, but then again, it goes back to my concern that the way it currently is may not be, I mean, because we have no guarantees of what they're going to do there.
But
Okay.
as long as they're saying, if they don't do chemicals and things down there, then we shouldn't have fire concerns, or welding, or.
Well,
whatnot.
right,
Yeah,
but,
I understand.
you know,
that.
I'd rather not have a fire occur and then say, oops.
Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
made a mistake and, that's it, type of thing, because that's still,
Gotta make
you know,
sure.
there's 3 apartments above, and whatever it is, I would think that they would want to encapsulate that particular room and make it, less of a safety issue. And that's it, thank you.
All right, Nicole?
So those are my
I don't have
concerns.
anything further.
I mean, I think it's all been discussed. If you can bring information on that paint booth, just to make us feel better about that, that's it.
Move the planning board declare its intent to be lead agency to coordinate the environmental review of the proposed project as an unlisted action and authorize the planning department circulation of notice of said intent, a copy of the EAF, and a copy of the application to all involved and interested agencies.
Second.
Moved and seconded for lead agency. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
I move the planning board defer further action on this application pending establishment of lead agency and direct the applicant to respond in writing to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies included but not limited to the following 1 through 11.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Robert, when do you think, just because there's it's operating without benefit of approvals right now, when do you think, could you give a time estimate on when this would be coming back to the board?
Well, I would like to be able to get myself, first I'm gonna be talking to the client, and then I would be recommending that we try to get ourselves on for the June meeting. So we'd be looking to submit in May.
Okay.
That'd be good.
All right.
And is the paint booth is not, I know is the paint booth also operating? Is it on site?
No, they haven't even purchased it yet. They have been in communications with a manufacturer. They have selected the one that they would like to use. They're not gonna be purchasing it until they actually know, that this is
can get
a
approved,
feasible
right.
thing. Correct.
Thank you.
That's wise.
Exactly, because as you said, they are very expensive.
Yep.
And this is a definite, commitment to doing something on that site, by doing it.
All right, good luck, thanks.
Thank you.
We have a time extension, Savona's rear dining area. I move the planning board grant 2 90-day time extensions of conditional site plan approval from April 21st, 2023 forward to October 18th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And last one on our docket this evening is the town code amendment for cannabis retail. You guys filling in for Mike?
I think I feel more confident if Lisa spoke to it.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I mean, you have a proposed, the current town, what's before the town board now. There is some discussion as that it may be changing in some ways, that the town board would like a little bit more control over where the sites may go. But what you have in front of you right now is what you're being asked to opine upon tonight. So you have Mike's recommendation to grant a positive recommendation because we frankly think we did a nice job in drafting it. But you also, knowing that it, may change, the board is also free to grant a neutral at this point. But really, and I don't know if the board, if anyone has any questions about it, I can see if I can answer them, but.
I mean, the current law restricts it to just the business highway.
Right, and
Highway
that's
bus-
not
highway
proposed to
business
change,
area.
so it's probably going to stay business highway. Right, what may change is the mechanism by which the town board does its approvals, which special use permit versus floating zone, which has been discussed in some ways as part of the town board public hearings. So,
Okay.
Thanks, Lisa.
Anyone have questions on this?
I mean, the thing to keep in mind now is, if nothing happens and nothing gets enacted, it's treated as retail. There's no provision for any greater protection. So this, enacts some of the separation distances and so on. The other thing to know is that the state hasn't finalized its regulations yet. So, but we think we've incorporated the draft regulations that are floating around into here, and then some added protections for town residents.
Lisa, a question, will they put a limit on the number of dispensaries?
Not a limit per se on the number, but there are pretty significant distance requirements, and one of them is that distance from another retail dispensary, so you wouldn't be able to have them close by each other, and they also can't be near schools, houses of worship, places that
Okay.
attract kids and so on. So when you take all that, it's, there
So
are very.
similar to what the liquor laws are?
Yes.
Okay.
So there are I think it's even more
It's even more
restricted
strict, yeah.
than the liquor law. So there are even fewer places where they could go as of right. Well, not as of right, but go, where
Well,
they'd be
because
permitted to be cited.
Lisa, isn't the state also, you guys know a limitation on number of facilities. Is the state limiting the number by region?
Well, the state will be granting licenses, so nothing will come into the town unless the state has already vetted the applicant and the location and everything else about it. And I think it would be shocking if the state, allowed any of them to go near each other. I don't know if I know that they granted another 99 licenses, so I don't know that they'll be limiting the licenses per se, but they will be limiting the distances between them.
Well, the interesting thing is, just read an article today that, at least out west anyway, Washington State, California, et cetera, a lot of the stores that opened are starting to close down. And then also there seems to be in some cases a big excess in the amount of, I use the word weed, available. And so they're trying to figure out, can they pass laws to allow sale outside of the state?
Well, I know, I've seen documentaries in California in particular that 90% of it or more is still done illegally because everybody's trying to bypass the taxes that legalization does, so
Right.
it's still an issue.
Right, one other component to this law that we should know is we didn't have regulations concerning tobacco stores as such in the town, so we incorporated those as part of this draft so that we can get a little more control over smoke shops and other things like that. So
Now, does that include the vaping shops also?
It does.
Okay.
Yep.
So the question before the board is positive or neutral? Just because it's.
Yeah, I'm for positive.
I think it's good to
I
have the
think it's good
restrictions.
to have
Positive
I
is
think
good.
we have to take steps in that direction, so I'm more positive.
Care to make a motion?
Okay. The planning board conveys a positive recommendation to the town board regarding adoption of the proposed town code amendment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. I just wish I wasn't smelling it everywhere all of a sudden, driving down Route 9. Yep, there we do. Anything else before the,
I move that we end tonight's meeting.
Second.
moved and seconded, call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. We're officially over and out.